jobs back, and we're not going to be laughed at. Now, I will say this, that already Canada, and I respect very much, as you know, there's a very strong man in Canada who said he was going to charge a surcharge or a tariff on electricity coming into our country. He has called and he said he's not going to do that. Okay, he's not going to do that. And it would have been a very bad thing if he did. And he's not going to do that, so I respect that. We've been treated very unfairly by Canada. We've been treated very unfairly by Mexico. But we've been treated very unfairly by every country all over the world. The European Union is horrible, horrible. And we're going to get it back. And I have a choice. I could just coast, and eventually there'd be a blow-up down the road, maybe a long way. But we owe $36 trillion, and we're going to get it back. We're the biggest, we're the best, and I'm very optimistic. I have to tell you, I'm very optimistic about the country.
That was President Trump on the news, and Ontario's Premier Doug Ford today backed off his threat of a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to Michigan, New York, Minnesota, after President Trump doubled his tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum imports to 50%. Joining us now from the Senate Doge and Senate Budget Committee, he's a one and only Nebraska Senator, Senator Pete Ricketts. Senator, we are so excited to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us. What is your take on this tariff fight? We're seeing high tariffs out of Mexico, Canada, and China, anywhere from 10% to even 50%. What do you make of this? We know the market's in turbulence. America has been engaged for years. Do you feel the White House Trump team is communicating to the market exactly what the problem is and what the end game is? What do you think?
Trump administration has been very clear. It's really got two uses for tariffs. One, you can get countries to do what in the case of, for example, Canada and Mexico. He wants to step in and particularly the biggest killer of our young people, 70,000 take it very seriously, the end as well as illegal immigration. We also a level playing field for American country. The average weighted tariff that we charge products coming into our country is 1.5%. The rest of the world charges our products an average of 6% tariffs. That means that it's 4 times higher. So we want to get to that level playing field, which is all countries have a fair shot of exporting our goods and services over places like Europe and so forth, as you mentioned before. So he's got a strategy. It's a little different depending on the country, but it's really about trying to make America more safe and more prosperous.
But it's really interesting. You just laid it out, Senator. And there's also this, you know, the Trump team trying to detox the economy off of Biden's historically massive government overspending, or spend money printing. We're trying to get back to a policy Joe Biden's weak 2% annual growth. They're trying to do deregulation, unleash U.S. energy, unleash U.S. manufacturing, make the tax cuts permanent, and stop the flood of illegal aliens pressuring the system. You can't run $2 trillion annual deficits anymore, but I really want you to take a reaction and listen to Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt today. Listen to what she said. Watch.
Merck has opened a $1 billion facility at its North Carolina site. This is just the latest pharmaceutical company to boost its U.S. manufacturing and lose President Trump's tariffs. This announcement follows Eli Lilly's plans to invest at least $27 billion to build 4 new manufacturing plants here in the United States, and Pfizer, as well as Trump, is considering moving their manufacturing overseas right here in the United States of America. As the president has said over and over again, when we purchase products made in the USA, profits stay here, the revenue stays here, and most importantly, the jobs stay here. And despite the globalist mainstream media's attempts to worry consumers, President Trump will not repeat the trend of past American presidents who broke their promises to the American public and smiled while they stuck a knife in the back of American workers and shipped their jobs overseas.
That's tough talk. What do you make of the shuttle list companies talking about expanding in the U.S.? The media and Democrats are saying, well, these are just promises, they're not doing here.
My experience with President Trump is that he can pick up his business on what they say he's going to do, or else they may not consequences for it. So I would expect these methods to be very, very good and will create American jobs. And again, that's in line with President Trump's goal of creating more prosperity in America. The president talks about how we've been treated unfairly by the rest of the world, and again, just use the tax on the tariffs. And what he's trying to do is level that playing field, get the investment back here in this country so that we can create the jobs here. And by the way, this bill is going to create social security that we diversify our supply chains out of places like communist China. We can't have all our pharmaceuticals being made there. We saw what happened during the pandemic.
Oh, is there a Godzilla? I'll watch Godzilla about crypto scams any day of the week. It's got Joe Rogan.
Open those. Why are they legal? Today, Elon Musk and Joe Rogan are going to tell us they're...
Well, Godzilla DM'd me and told me he bought mine and Enron merch. He specified mine, not the Enron company. So he bought both of them, but he also bought mine. And in every video, I never see him wear mine. In every video, he's wearing the other one. The one that launched a rug pull crypto token that he talked about. I launched no rug pull crypto token. And he sent me a picture. He actually did buy it. He doesn't wear it. Yet? Don't say yet. Okay? If I wanted a rug pull, I would rug pull with the best of them. I'm not doing it. Actually, do you think Coffeezilla would make a cool video on me if I did do a rug pull? That'd be kind of fire. Cow coin? What if every cow coin you buy, we donate some of the profits to a needy cow? Or we give a cup of coffee to a cow. That way it's like there's social justice. And I'm the cow.
The whole meme coin thing is bananas. It's like a casino or something. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I see this comparison a lot, guys. This is a rigged game, much more in the likes of something like penny stocks, right? That's not the same thing as gambling. And meme coins are the same way. They're promoted. People buy in, not fully understanding who's got all the supply, who's scamming them on the back end. I just want to be clear.
Yeah, I want to be clear as well, which is that you would have better odds in a casino than you would trying to win on a meme coin. If you're buying over meme coins where the creators own agents who own and are streaming,
Right. So I think we expected we had meme coins. It's
Welcome to Liberty Falls. Population? Well, less than yesterday. Never been so glad to see backup arrive. Hell, lucky I'm still in one piece. I need you to look for survivors. Subdue any threats. Help me save this town. Copy.
Something sticky.
It's a smart guy. Biggest thing I've invested in Doge. He just bought into the Snowfield like he looks like smart and works like, oh, you're so smart. That guy's a very successful tech job. He's good.
Ledger
Around him, respecting his job.
Any kind of science status are missing somewhere in your hand.
He's like, yeah, I've got a family.
Counting on their
And
expertise
it's
to
like
find this
this level of hype and public over Doug around the room. It strikes me as incredibly
Things pretty dog shit as it is. No need to make it worse. Got it? He's pretty. Can he talk? Mum always told me to stop looking off scabs. Some things never change.
You know, you just talk about a 9 to 5 job. So, like you tweet 4,000 times a week, you have 14 children, and you're the richest man in history. Does it or the thing Elon said where he said,
Sorry,
you know,
I
we're
can't
going to
get
have to go through some economic
Anyone had to show up.
It's like, not me.
Glad it was you.
You're a government-connected billionaire. You're going to be fine. It's like, you're talking about people losing their jobs. It's not a wheeze. I'm saying wheeze.
And so people who are rich often go, people, like, I put money into this stuff. And it's like, yeah, but they're like looking up a mountain and they're trying to get up there. And they're these guys promising big way. And they're thinking, also, there also is a trend of financial nihilism that everybody's talking about it.
Talking about this. I made a video on stuff second time Morgan Kitty came back. And I just talked a lot about financial management, which is just
You know, boss,
pervasive
you
sense
walk a
of
really
all
fine line
people
between
that act
love and
like in a
dark,
house.
murderous fucking
The
rage.
idea of working a job, getting promoted,
I hope
saving
termites
money,
see you
and
and you
getting a
asshole.
house and a family is like out of the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gamble. I'm going to gamble on a Bitcoin, or I'm going to gamble on GME, or I'm going to gamble on AMC, or I'm going to gamble on. That's how it's going. Because you're looking rationally at the world, and you're not and you're going on a casino. Now, you know, I try to remember about that. I remember about like Florida, most about should even be less than stuff. Those are talking. You might see ratings, and you're actually so much better on trying to step comparatively all your years, you'll be way better off if you just try to like be a little bit wiser and
History is not a slingshot, I'm
harder
fucking
money
down.
than you got. Anyway, parlays. That's like our favorite one.
Like doing simple life savings is very
Rock
good.
on.
No,
Looks
but
like
you
there'll be
can
no rest
gamble
till
a
X
little,
fills.
and you can ride waves and win a little, lose a little. Just want to have some fun. Yeah, and don't come bad. Then they're gonna have. So,
But if you put your family's
Sorry. I think there's inflation, which means the recent percentage inflation is at future, not above. Dogecoin is the people's crypto. Bought Dogecoin for Rolex so he could be a toddler hodler. Dogecoin is their favorite cryptocurrency.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for enjoying freedom. It's a great day to have a great day. It's a great day to talk about some silver. In today's video, I want to talk about how the spot price of silver really doesn't matter anymore. It's borderline irrelevant, and I want to talk about premiums attached to silver and why certain prices haven't really meant much for coming up on 5 years now. We're going to get into it, but really quick, just in case you're new, make sure to subscribe for a bunch of videos. Subscribe to my second channel for bonus videos. Follow me on social media at MikeyDYDSS across all platforms. And 3 quick things before we get started. As always, if you haven't already, try you out some Celsius Energy. That's right, it's a healthier alternative to the other energy drinks out there. You can get a 12-pack variety pack on Amazon right now. I'll leave the affiliate link in the description. 2, if you haven't already started investing and you're interested in it, download Webull and fund your account. They make it really easy to begin investing, and it's super simple to navigate on the app, and they're actually going to give you some free stocks just for downloading it and funding your account. So that link will be in the description as well. And 3rd and finally, if you need any stacking supplies, airtight tubes and capsules, microscopes, mini lock boxes, anti-tarnish paper, the list goes on. I will leave all those linked in the description section down below for your convenience. Alright, so today, as I am... Where is my phone? I don't even know what the date is. As I'm filming today's video, it is Thursday, March 6th, 2025. So we are at the very beginning of March, making our way to the middle of March, and if you remember what happened in the middle of March 5 years ago, The whole world got turned upside down, shaken around, spun, bounced off the walls, driven up against the basketball court, dunked on, and still somehow missed. The reason I wanted to bring this up is because we are approaching that, 5-year absence kind of day with kind of bonkers for a little while. And one thing that we noticed was that stock prices during the initial COVID crash, stock price got cut nearly in half. And if the spot price of a metal falls by
Security chief and new arrivals. Could have used you sooner.
you're able to
but
acquire
welcome just the
more.
same. I'm in the mansion.
30 to
Command
40%
center.
discount.
Injured, but
Same thing goes
intact.
for stocks.
Most
Your
everyone
favorite
else
stock
is...
gets correct.
You got eyes.
Knocked down 10
Look,
to 15%.
we need to get this situation
Buy
under
more
control
at
ASAP.
10
Be ready for
15%
anything.
discounted price. That's how it works. You buy the dip. That's how it's always done. All right. COVID crash. When spot price of silver got cut nearly, it was $18 prior, and it fell all the way down to somewhere between 11 and 12 bucks. We saw online precious metal dealer websites start listing everything as out of stock. Couldn't order anything. If you did order something, orders were getting canceled. You were told that you would replace your order. And by the time you did that, everything was back in stock. The spot price was still the same, but premiums were cranked up 3%. So premiums prior to the COVID crash, $1.25, $1.50 over spot, depending on what you wanted. Obviously, there's higher premiums, stuff like that. But generic silver rounds, 8 rounds, silver, stuff like that.
I don't know how, but it feels like this stupid box is smoking at me. I'm just gonna pretend it's a side effect from the Wonka sodas.
Keep pushing.
We'll
We need to find out what Paul's bonus.
We'll call it
Even if
$20
he turns
just
up
for,
with us.
the sake of simple math. Spot price is $18 and change. Premium is $1 and change. Over spot, that means you're getting silver for roughly $20. But crash happens. Spot price comes to what's called $12, and the premiums that are attached are now like $10 over the spot. Which means the out the door price $10 attached to $12 an ounce metal. Now it's like $22. In some cases, it was. So how did the spot price get knocked down by, let's just say, let's call it about 40%, because I think that's roughly around where it was. How did the spot price fall by 40%, and it's still costing us more than
It's
it
gonna
was
take everything I
prior
have
to
and flipping the bird for my
by
trouble,
40%,
isn't it?
before the crash happened? How are we buying the dip?
Oh, Bob,
Yet,
you know exactly what this girl
because the
wants.
premiums that attached to it. And the reason the premiums were cranked up so high initially is my belief that a lot of these online precious metal dealing storefronts got us out of the silver around like $16, $17 an ounce, topped out at $18, $19, $7 per dollar. They're great deals. They're a great deal. Now all of a sudden, all the silver
Any
that
chance
they
you can
got
spit out a
at
fresh
$16,
meat pie?
spot prices are like $12. They got to crank up those premiums so the profits can still run in. So from a business perspective, I totally understand. Spot prices are the and why is that? Unfortunately,
Get
also
on
from a
with it, you
business
overgrown
perspective,
slot
I
machine.
understand supply and demand. If people are willing to pay, you should, in theory, be able to set whatever price you want to set. I get it. It hurts the stacker, it hurts the customer, hurts me. It's painful. Hurt you, I'm sure. For spot price to go back to $18 an ounce, and premium still being $7, $8 over spot. Horrible. But from a business perspective, from a free market perspective, you gotta understand it. You gotta respect it. It hurts, but I get it. I wouldn't want anybody telling me, hey, lower your price because I want it at a cheaper price. I'm still gonna pay the higher price anyway, but lower the price because I'm telling you to. No, it doesn't work that way. So, around this time, mid-2020, we'll call it, it wasn't during the initial crash, but toward the middle of 2020, I remember, making videos every single day, sometimes 2, 3 videos a day. I was live streaming at night. I was all in at the time in this whole YouTube world. And I remember the number one topic was the price. Everybody was talking about the spot price and the premiums. which is why I, no pun intended here, coined the term stack price. That's when I kind of declared that spot price is no longer super important, and premiums shouldn't even really cross your mind all that much. I came up with the term stack price, which is a very simple math equation. Spot price plus the average premium equals stack price. So today, let's just say the average premium, generic rounds, the slightly lower premium, government coins, bars and whatnot, let's just call it $5 over spot. The average premium. A lot of coins out there carry much higher premiums than that, but let's just call it $5 over spot for simple math. Spot price, as I'm filming this video, is $32.95, so let's just call it 33 bucks. Spot price, 33 bucks, plus premium, average premium, 5 bucks. Stack price is $38. You shouldn't walk into a coin shop expecting to pay less than that. You shouldn't go to an online precious metal dealing storefront, which, by the way, try to ease up on that. Support the local coin shops. Support small businesses. Shop local. Whether that's, produce, whether that's anything. Coin shops, coffee shops, things like that. Support small businesses. Shop local. But you shouldn't go to a coin shop, and you shouldn't go to an online precious metal website expecting to pay anything less than $38. Now, if the spot price is different by the time you're watching this video, if the average premium is different from the time you're watching this video, just follow the formula. Take whatever the spot price is, and whatever the average premium is, add them together, that is stack price. That is the number. That is the price you should be going with. Spot price doesn't really matter anymore when premiums have been bonkers and bananas for the last 5 years. So I remember kind of coming to terms with this toward mid-2020, like the summer of 2020, and I remember saying to people, I was like, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I think we should probably just consider this the new norm. I don't see premiums coming down. And if they do come down, I don't see them coming down very much. I think the days of, $1.25 over spot premiums are a thing of the past. I think that's ancient history. Personally, I don't think we're ever going to see that again, regardless of what spot price does. And the higher spot price goes, the more excited people are going to get. The FOMO buyers start diving in even more, which guess what? It's going to crank up the premiums even higher. So don't go by spot price. Don't worry about the premiums. Just add them together, whatever they may be at the time, and that right there is stack price. That's what I've been saying for the last 5 years. And I do understand that it is discouraging. I do understand that it's met with a lot of pushback, especially from the online dealers, because the local coin shop, they're kind of relying on you, they're relying on me, they're relying on the people in the area. The online dealers, they got an international customer base. So if I don't want to pay, you will. If you don't want to pay, she will. If she doesn't want to pay, he will. A borderline, unlimited, a borderline, unlimited, and infinite customer base. Millions and millions and millions of people lining up. And if one person doesn't want to pay, the next person in line will. And if one person in line does want to pay, the next person in line would be willing to pay even more. If it got turned into an auction, do you have any idea how much money they would make? It's supply and demand. If people are willing to pay, that's what they can charge. That being said, yes, I absolutely do miss the days when spot price was $14 and change. Man, average those days. The summer of 2018, I believe. Spot price was $14, $15. Premiums were, at least for the pieces of silver I was picking up, usually no more than $1.50 per spot. Man, my out the door stack price was $16.50, maybe $17 at most.
Make no friends in the pits if you take no prisoners. 1 minute you're up $500,000 in soybeans, and the next, boom, your kids don't go to college and they repossess your bank. Are you with me?
The revolution starts now.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
You are about to enter the Peter Schiff Show.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
The Peter Schiff Show is on. They decided that they wanted to make a virtue out of selfishness. Your money, your stories, your freedom. The Peter Schiff Show.
All right, everybody. So I want to get today's podcast started by talking about what's going on in the market. So before I even get into that, some of you may be wondering, oh, whoa, forgot about the mic. I just looked up and I noticed I didn't have my mic in front of me. So it's a good thing I saw that. Otherwise, people are going to be complaining probably in the comment section. But the first thing I wanted to comment on is the fact that I'm wearing these eyeglasses. And the reason I'm wearing these eyeglasses is I developed a sty in my right eye. And it's getting a little better, but it's pretty red and puffy. So I figured I might as well just put the glasses on, and that way you don't notice it as much. You know, I wear glasses. I'm a bit nearsighted, but I've never worn contacts. So I do, in real life, wear glasses. Although I've found as I've gotten older, actually, my distance of vision has actually improved. It's reading I have a hard time with now. You know, so I have these are bifocals, but when I'm reading like a menu, or I can't even read anything really on a medicine, you know, like label. I gotta take a photograph of it, and then I gotta blow it up. So it gets frustrating when you get older. But anyway, that's why I'm wearing these eyeglasses. But anyway, so the stock market yesterday was a big drop, and the Dow at one point was down over 1,000 points, which I know, you know, it's not that much when you're talking about a Dow above 40,000. So 1,000-point drop in the Dow is not, you know, what it used to be, you know, a couple of decades ago, right? When that was, you know, remember the '87 stock market crash. The big crash was 508 points, right? Because the Dow was, you know, 2,800 or something like that. But we've had, you know, a lot of 1,000-point drops in the Dow, but you know, they always, you know, grab the headline because it still sounds like a lot. It's a big number, but the big loss was in the NASDAQ. There, I think you had about a 4% drop, although the Dow didn't close down 1,000. It was down about 800. But it fell another 478 today. And at the lows today, it was down close to 800 again on the low. But we got some, you know, negative, positive news on tariffs. First, Trump is going to double the tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel from 25% to 50%, which is a big problem for every company that needs steel and aluminum to make something. And those are important, you know, parts of automobiles, housing, you know, appliances, you know, aircraft. I mean, we use a lot of those metals, and now they're going to be a lot more expensive. So Trump announced that. The markets didn't like that. But then later on, there were some rumors that maybe the tariffs wouldn't happen, or maybe they would backtrack. I mean, whenever Trump threatens a tariff, it's going to come in, and you know, a few hours later, well, maybe we're not so sure. So the market got that. Then there was also some rumors, maybe they're not rumors, maybe it's actually true, of a potential 30-day ceasefire between Russia and the Ukraine, and so I think the market's like that. So that kind of helped air the losses. And in fact, the NASDAQ managed to eke out a small gain on the day, thanks to some of the bigger tech, the FANG names, the Mag 7 names, that got decimated yesterday. A lot of those stocks had a turnaround Tuesday kind of bounce today, and so that helped the overall NASDAQ. The QQQ ended up in positive territory. The actual NASDAQ itself, I was looking at the QQQ. The NASDAQ itself was down slightly, but the QQQ, which has all those real big stocks in it, managed a small gain. But I don't think the market is out of the woods. I still stand by, really the call that I made on January 27th. If you haven't listened to that podcast, you missed that one. It was podcast 1005. And the title was The Consensus Trades Are About to Unravel. And when I talked about the consensus trades, I meant the trades that everybody agreed could lose, where everybody was, piled into this trade. And so that was mainly AI. And when I did that podcast, I talked about this was like the next day or the day after, there was a major $500 billion investment announced in, AI, right? And that really caused these stocks, NVIDIA and a bunch of these stocks were all going up. Even the companies spending the money went up, right? Because anything AI was, you got to buy that. And then it was also crypto. Because, they were talking about the strategic Bitcoin reserve and a lot of hype. And, when I did that podcast, Bitcoin was over $106,000 a token. Yesterday, it dropped as low as 76,000 and change. Now, low, it's all relative, but it was a 30% drop from where it was about the time that I did that podcast. The high was 109 and change. Didn't quite get to 110, but it's now dropped 30%. But to give you an idea of the magnitude of the decline we've had so far, so just in the last week and 2 days, which the last week plus 2 days, the Dow is down 3.3%. Not that much. But the QQQ is down 7%. The Russell 2000 down 7.3%. The Russell 2000 is almost in a bear market. It's down over 17% from its peak. So it's the closest index to a bear market. S&P down 6.4%. But listen to some of these consensus stocks. The Trump trades. Tesla is down 21% in 7 days. 21%. Tesla is also an AI stock, too, because AI is part of the self-driving and all that stuff. But it was very much part of the Trump trade because, after all, Elon Musk is in the White House. He's practically running the White House, right? And he's got a company, so clearly, if he's got the president in his pocket, that's got to be good for Tesla. And that's why Tesla had such a huge run after Trump won, because it was like a no-brainer, right? You got to buy Tesla. After all, he's in good with the government, right? His policies are going to favor Tesla. The government's not going to go on a war against Tesla. Kamala Harris, right? They would have investigated Tesla on left, right, and center, right? So everybody bought Tesla just like they were buying NVIDIA. Well, NVIDIA is down 15% in the last 7 days. And everybody owned NVIDIA, down 15%. Bitcoin is actually not down that much in these 7 days, it's down about 4.5%. But what's also important, the dollar index is down. The dollar index is down 4%. That's a huge 7-day period for the dollar index to be down 4%. Almost all of that on Friday. But it was down again today. The dollar index now is at the lowest it's been since October of last year. So all of the Trump-inspired seeds have evaporated. And I said that as the dollar was rallying and everybody was saying, oh, the dollar's going to go up because Trump's going to impose tariffs and the tariffs are good for the dollar. And I kept saying, no, they're not. They're not good for the dollar. And now that we actually have the tariffs and they've started, the dollar is tanking. And part of the reason that people thought that foreigners would pay the tariffs is they said, well, the dollar's going to go up. And so those imports are going to be cheaper because of the currency. And that will offset the tariff because the dollar will be so much stronger that we'll get these products cheaper. Well, what's actually happening, the dollar is going down
And so instead of offsetting some of the pain of the tariffs, it makes the pain worse. Because now we have to pay higher prices, not just because of the tariffs, but because the dollar's gone down. And these are foreign products where the costs were in foreign currencies. But what went up over the last 7 days are gold stocks. Gold, GDX, the big stocks, up 4.5% in the last 7 days. The GDXJ, the junior, is up 6.6%. So, they pull down as the market goes down, the stocks go down. Like the gold stocks got 5%. They were down like 4%. But they made it all back today. Now, they never should have gotten it down yet. Talk about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Sure, gold was down about $20, but it was up $30 today, $35. But even though it was down, it barely went below 2,900. Hey, watch on CNBC this morning. Gold is already right back above 2,900, 2,910. And they don't even mention that, right? Gold's up 25, $30. Don't even mention it. All they do is say, well, Bitcoin is back above 80,000. I mean, so what? So what? I mean, the fact that gold is holding above 2,900 is far more significant than Bitcoin having a dead cat bounce back up above 80,000. It rallied today, along with some of these crypto stocks. But again, I think it was just a universal rally, and I think it's just going to get killed from here because the main thing that was driving Bitcoin was the strategic reserve. And now that's done. I mean, we got the reserve, right? It's the same crypto they already have. What's in the reserve is what the government already has. What they can buy. And that's why MicroStrategy came out on Monday, the same day that their stock got killed, by like 20%. It was one of the biggest days I can recall in MicroStrategy stock. Now, it was up, big today. It was up 9% today, but it's down 28% in the last 7 days. Almost all of that was yesterday, right? But yesterday, MicroStrategy announced that they're going to buy another 21 billion, another 21 billion of Bitcoin, and they're going to sell their stock.
Keep wasting those
I don't
shits
think
on site.
they're going to be able to get that done. I think the stock is going to go below the value. Right now, it's still trading at about an 18% premium, but that's a much lower premium than what it used to trade at relative to its Bitcoin. But the way Saylor is able to get a positive Bitcoin yield, right, the way he describes it, is he sells his stock at a premium to the value of the Bitcoin, then he takes the money and buys Bitcoin. So the Bitcoin per share goes up. Now also the shares outstanding goes up, so the company's being diluted, and when they borrow the money to do it, the debt per share goes up, but he doesn't care about that, right? He just focuses on this one Bitcoin yield. But once the price of stock, MicroStrategy, trades at a discount to its Bitcoin, which it will, then MicroStrategy is out of the Bitcoin buying business. Because then if it buys any Bitcoin, it will produce a negative Bitcoin. And that will probably really unravel the company. So, but I think MicroStrategy's plan, the greater fool of MicroStrategy is to the taxpayers. But Trump said no, the taxpayers not buying any more Bitcoin. They're not going to sell the Bitcoin we have, which they should. They should get rid of it. That would be in favor of the taxpayer. But he said they're going to hold on to it. But they're not going to buy, and MicroStrategy is going to buy. But look at how much the market has gone down since that podcast that I did on January 27th. Because there, when I did that, the dollar index was at 107.5, and now it's barely holding on to 104. As I said, Bitcoin is 106. Now it's like 82, something like that. The Nasdaq's down 8.3%. The Russell 2000 down 11%. But look at the big consensus stocks since that podcast. Nvidia down 10%, and Tesla down 42%. 42% on Tesla since January 27th. Oh, MicroStrategy is down 28%. So that's not the last 7 days. MicroStrategy is down 28% since my January 27th podcast. But the GDX is up 11%, and the GDXJ is up 12.25%. Now, you wouldn't know that. Right? If you just watch the industry, you have no idea that this is going on. Like, gold stocks are performing like this. And, the foreign stocks continue to go up. Right? The German market, the French market, the Spanish market, Switzerland, Hong Kong, China, right? The foreign market is going up. And I'm listening on CNBC, and they're making fun of them. They're like, what is this? This is crazy. Why are these stocks going up? The thing is, the valuations in Europe and in Asia are a fraction of the valuations here. I mean, we're priced for perfection, and we're not going to get it. And, one of the reasons, and I was talking about the consensus trade unraveling in January 27th, one of the reasons I thought that was the peak, and I think that might have.
They may have talked about this and other things. Art Laffer, former Reagan economist, Steve Moore, hosted More Money on WABC Radio, and together they managed to write the Trump economic miracle. Did it without my help. Unbelievable. Gentlemen, thank you. Nice to see you. Just kidding. I just want to say, Art Laffer, I want to talk about recessions and tariffs and all the rest of it, but Elon Musk is quite something. And, people have threatened him left and right, and he is just strong, standing up, committed. He wants this country to succeed. He doesn't want us to go into bankruptcy. I'm not sure, given his business acumen, given this commitment he's made to President Trump and to the country, I'm not sure we've seen anything or anybody like this, Arthur. I don't know, maybe go back in history, but I can't remember anybody like Elon Musk. What do you think?
We haven't come close to anything like this historically, Larry. We did have the Grace Commission, and then we had the Little Hoover Commission. As you said, that we had the GAO one last year. That's all true. But when you look at what this man and his team are doing, it is absolutely transformational, and I couldn't plead.
Good evening, I'm Alicia Menendez, and we begin this hour with conservative Republicans doing something they promised they would never do, pass a temporary stopgap funding patch through the end of September.
On this vote, the yeas are 217, the nays are 213. The bill is passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
That is an about-face for a large swath of the GOP. As you may recall, Republicans spent the majority of the Biden administration demanding individual appropriation bills and calling resolutions such as the one they are putting forward today, quote, failure theater. Here's the thing. Congressional Republicans need to clear all obstacles out of the way so they can make Trump's tax cuts permanent, got federal funding, and Elon Musk's funding cuts permanent as well. Vice President J.D. Vance told conservative holdouts that they should vote for the short-term PR because Republicans have passed a separate resolution of the cuts that Musk has unleashed for the Americans. President Trump spent most of the Monday calling Republican holdouts, encouraging them to vote yes, which they did. Except for Kentucky Republicans, Massachusetts, only Republicans respond in this belief. His reward for that, a promise from President Trump to primary him in the midterm election. House Democrats, one Democrat, Maine Democrat, Jared Golden, joined the Republicans in passing the resolution by his colleague projection.
It's all part of the broader scheme. At massive tax cuts, the billionaire donors, the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected, and then to stick working-class Americans.
This bill requires the District of Columbia, for instance, to take a $1.1 billion cut. Not out of federal funds, out of their own funds that they tax their people. It defunds the party. I wish I had more time to say how bad this bill is. Vote no.
If you feel this is the mandate that you have, you can do that on your own.
The resolution now, let's bring in NBC News senior national political reporter Sahil Kapoor, who is at the Capitol tonight. Sahil, how did Speaker Johnson get this over the finish line?
Hey, Alicia, well, this was ultimately the work of President Trump and the White House and the massive pressure campaign that they put on Republicans. Trump really wanted this issue of government funding
actually includes other campaigns as well. There was a pressure campaign that included calls to Republicans as well as threats. We've seen President Trump posting on social media multiple over the last few days, trashing Congressman Thomas. The only no vote on the rules to bring this up, as well as the bill itself. Everyone else buckled. All the other Republicans, including the ultra-conservative members, including the Freedom Caucus members who say they hate continuing resolutions, who pretty much never vote to fund the government. And this comes on the heels of them voting for a $4 trillion debt increase, at least the blueprint that makes way for that, just a few weeks ago. So we are seeing in real time this Republican Party transform in the image of Donald Trump. And this bill, it just passed the House by a vote of 217 to 213. Republicans had enough votes on their own to pass it and didn't even a single Democratic vote, although they did get one. It goes to the Senate now, where it's a bit of a different landscape. They some Democrats, the Republicans control the bill. Senator Rand Paul in Kentucky is a hard no. He has 8 Senate Democrats. And look, Democrats had a long lunch meeting of about 2 hours earlier today, and they had voted for that as consensus. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer did not take a position on the House bill. That tells me that Democrats provided and they're not to get the 8 votes they need to pass the bill, send it over to President Trump. And at the end of this week for recess, I know it sounds ridiculous, Alicia, but getting out of town for recess is a real motivator for members of Congress.
It does indeed sound ridiculous, especially in times like these. NBC 7-4. Thank you. Let's bring in our panel. Captain Hell, Washington Post columnist and newly announced co-host of the
Hi guys, on today's episode, we're cutting this board. That's right, we're going from cable to fiber optics. So today, I'll show you the installation, our new speeds, and compare prices for both. Coming up next on the Ultimate Tech Hub. So guys, let's go ahead and take a look at my network panel. This is the location of my cable modem, and I'll be replacing this with a fiber optic modem. But first, I'll need to run a fiber optic cable to this location. But where does the fiber optic cable come from? A typical location will be on the side of your house, near your main electrical panel. This black fiber optic wire comes from the street. So from this location, I need to run a fiber optic cable up the wall, through the attic, and fish that wire down into my panel. So I decided to hire Mike from JDM Automations in Las Vegas to run that cable for me. He's done work for me in the past, and he's quick and affordable. His information will be in the description below. So first thing he did was drill a hole from the garage that went through the wall into the box on the outside of the house. This hole is where the cable is going to run through. And the fiber cable will go up the wall through a small hole that goes into the ceiling, which leads to the attic. And from the attic, the fiber cable will run to my network panel, which is located in my master bedroom closet. After I get the fiber cable into the network panel, I can then install the fiber modem. I probably could have done this myself, but why take a chance of falling through the ceiling and of course hurting myself? So sometimes it's better to call a professional, and that's exactly what I did. Alright, the fiber is now at my network panel. Now I need to call CenturyLink to connect the black fiber optic cable to my white fiber optic cable. Then we'll install the modem. And all we have to do is plug in the power supply, plug in the fiber optic cable to the modem, and plug in a Cat6 cable from the modem to my router. And that's it. And to be honest, I've been wanting to switch to fiber for a long time. So now let's go ahead and test our speed, our download and upload speed. CenturyLink says we'll get 940 megabits per second. But just a heads up, there are a lot of factors that will determine your download speed and your upload speed. So don't be surprised if you're not getting 940 megabits per second.
So let's go ahead and do a speed test. And I'm not getting 940 megabits per second. But that's okay. Like I said before, there are many factors that determine network speed. One factor is, are there other people on your network using bandwidth? And how old is your computer? A slow processor can put the brakes on your connection, causing slower speeds. And how old is your router? Just like your PC, an old router can slow down your connection. And lastly, your web browser can slow your connection as well. So it's a good idea to experiment with different web browsers, like Google Chrome, Firefox, or Safari. And make sure your operating system is up to date. That will increase security and efficiency. So now let's talk about pricing. To get 1 gigabit speeds, we chose CenturyLink. That's because they offer the fiber optics with installation and a modem, all for $65 a month. No contract, and the price never goes up. Let's compare
Welcome to Liberty Falls. Population? Well, less than yesterday. Never been so glad to see backup arrive. Hell, lucky I was still in one piece.
Elon Musk, who seems to really be in charge of stuff, sat down yesterday with Larry Kudlow for an interview on Fox News, and he went full white replacement theory. You have to really read between the lines and understand this ideology to understand what Elon is talking about. But boy, what an interview. Elon Musk was not particularly charismatic or articulate during this interview, which I know is not going to come as a shock to many people in my audience. Here is Elon Musk talking about how Democrats are looking to attract illegal immigrants, who, of course, remember, cannot vote. This is straight up white replacement theory.
The way support in entitlement spending, which is which is most of the federal spending is entitlements. So that's the big one to eliminate. That's the sort of $500 billion, maybe $700 billion. That is also a mechanism by which the Democrats attract and retain illegal immigrants by essentially paying them to come here and then turning them into voters. Yes. So this is why the Democrats are so upset about the situation, because they're losing. If we turn off this gigantic money magnet.
Let's talk to Brooke Rollins, Agriculture Secretary. Get to the USDA in a moment here. I want to first ask you about the economy. A couple little competing opinions here, all right? Here's the White House view. Kevin Hassett said this yesterday morning.
There are a lot of reasons to be extremely bullish about the economy going forward, but for sure this quarter there are some blips in the data. What's going to happen is the first quarter is going to squeak into the positive category, and then the second quarter is going to take off because everybody sees the reality of the tax cuts.
Okay, so you got that. You got Charlie Gasparino writing this to say that Wall Street pukes up its own medicine. And let's call for number 2, guys. And what he talks about is deregulation. He talks about the Trump team trying to deleverage the federal government and get it out of the American economy here. Brooke, on the flip side of that, you have J.P. Morgan now saying a recession is up to a 40% possibility. So what is it? Is it Hassett and Gasparino, or is it Jamie Dimon and J.P. Morgan?
Well, first of all, good morning, and thanks. Great to be with you on this beautiful day here at the White House. Listen, the bottom line is this. No one really knows, but here's what I do know, and here's what I believe, and my vision is exactly aligned with Kevin Hassett, my brilliant friend here running the National Economic Council, all of our dear friend Larry Kudlow and others, that this was always part of the plan, that the president's tool basket and his tools in that tool basket of how to truly bring our economy back after the malaise of the Biden years. But it's going to be a little bit bumpy. It will be imperfect. I mean, if it was easy and you could do it overnight, then it would happen with a snap of the fingers, but that's not it. And I think what's really telling is the president is so focused on not the short term, which, as we all know, in politics, everyone's always worried about the short term. He truly wants to fix America so that we have the American dream for everyone in a way that we lost in the last 4 years. And until Trump won, we lost for a long, long time. So this is really the reality where we are today. But I think Kevin's vision that it's going to be a little bumpy for a few weeks, but once we move into second quarter, we'll see a turnaround through deregulation, through lower taxes, through less government, through a focus on private enterprise and free markets versus...
Alright guys, we got the salad right here. We got the cat right there. And let's dig into the salad. Alright, so open it up. Oh wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of salad, man. Where's the dressing? I thought these things are supposed to come with dressing or something. Really? They didn't give dressing. Alright, this is the Sneed salad. Let's eat the Sneed salad, Aslan. It's called the Sneed salad because Tyree Sneed can't afford it. Ooh. So I don't got any Caesar dressing here, so I'm just using ranch. Just go with the flow, bro. Should work. Oh, look, we got lemons in there and stuff too. This is a big salad. Oh, man. Yeah, Tyree Sneed definitely can't afford this. That's for sure. Look, there's lemon seeds in there. Squish the lemon in there. Alright, here we are. We're eating the speed salad. It's called the speed salad because Tyree Speed can't afford this salad. So yeah. Look at that. Very good.
And we also expect the White House to try to reassure folks who are sitting there looking at their 401ks going down and down and down. This is the White House. They came in trying to get federal workers to retire by the hundreds of thousands. But it's tough to make the argument that you should retire if your retirement accounts are getting throttled, which is what is happening right now. So we hope for answers to all of these curiosities any minute. John?
A2, Peter Ducey. That was the Fox who was saying what, frankly, most Americans are saying, which is that it's not great that the White House is both cutting the jobs of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of federal employees, while at the same time ensuring that the environment they're fired into is as bad as humanly possible. And look, I get that Donald Trump wants to pretend that everything is fine and that these moves are somehow a necessary evil to get the economy to where we need it to be, but hear me out here. Trump took office with a 4% unemployment rate, historically low. The U.S. economy was the strongest in the world, the stock market was at a record high, inflation was cooling, and was in the 2 to 3% range, with 2 being the target. So that stuff was all good. The problem was the cost of goods. And by the way, that's no secret. Trump himself admitted that the high cost of groceries, for example, was literally why he won the election.
And one or two things, the border, and more than immigration, they like to say immigration. I break it down more to the border, but I won on the border and I won on groceries. It's a very simple word, groceries. Like almost, who uses the word? I started using the word, the groceries. When you buy apples, when you buy bacon, when you buy eggs, they would double and triple the price over a short period of time. And I won an election based on that. We're going to bring those prices way down.
So the issue is that costs were too high. And yet, now think about what Trump has done since he's been president. He's launched trade wars with all of our trading partners. Well, it's all well and good that Trump wants to paint this as some hit to foreign countries, but tariffs don't get paid by foreign countries. They get paid by Americans. They are a tax paid by American consumers to the American government. We foot the bill. So you've got a president who is elected with a mandate to lower costs, whose first act in office is to make everything more expensive? And by the way, it's not just the fact that costs are rising. The way that Trump is wielding these tariffs is also causing a ton of economic instability. And you know what the worst thing possible is for the stock market? Instability, which is why the markets have now entered correction territory. And even Trump himself refuses to rule out the possibility of a recession.
And I want to ask you about Ukraine and the blow up the other day with Zelensky. Let me stay on the economy for a moment because there are rising worries about a slowdown. You've got the Atlanta Federal Reserve saying we're going to have a contraction in the first quarter. Look, I know that you inherited a mess, and you said that the other night. But are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time. It takes a little time.
But I think it should be great for us. I mean, I think it should be great. It's going to be great ultimately for the farmer.
This is a guy who would try to sell sand in the desert. The guy would sell water to a fish. And so for even this guy not to unequivocally help himself and shut down Maria Bartiromo and instead waffle on the idea of a recession should really tell you something about the economic environment that he's created. In fact, that's a point that Fox's Jessica Tarlov brought up here.
Even the strongest allies of the president don't like these tariffs. They might think it's possible to use them smaller levels, 5%, 10%, but the tariff whiplash is destroying us. You look at the market tanking, and I thought Peter Doocy had a great point earlier on today, our very own Peter Doocy, where he said they want federal workers to take the buyout. They want them to retire, but they're sinking their retirement accounts. And Caroline Levitt is standing up there at the podiums, and she's just, either she doesn't know how a tariff works or she's lying to the people. She said tariffs are a tax hike on foreign countries and a tax cut for the American people. And then a reporter, I think from the AP, so they got back in the room, said, have you ever paid a tariff? I have. They don't get charged on foreign countries. And then she went Trumpian. She goes, I think it's insulting that you're trying to test my knowledge on economics.
Meaning now we've got two hosts on Fox's Air who are acknowledging objective reality about the situation that Trump has created. White House Press Secretary Caroline Levitt was asked about the prospect of a recession, and this is the best that she could come up with.
It seems that the read on the president's policies is one in which they do not have confidence in his trade tariffs policy. They do not have confidence in what the president said to Fox News over the weekend, that he didn't rule out the idea of a recession. What is your read in terms of the decline that we've seen over the last week and a half in financial markets?
Well, I think there's actually a lot of reason to be confident, and many people do feel confident. Just look at the nearly $2 trillion in private investment that this president has secured. Look at the comments made by the CEO of Apple, one of the biggest companies in this world, who said that he is bullish on the future of American innovation under the leadership of President Trump. Look at CEO confidence. According to the Conference Board measure of CEO confidence, in Q1 2025, under the leadership of this president, it jumped to its highest level in 3 years, from cautious optimism to confident optimism.
Ah, well,
I just want people to know that you can't be penalized for being a patriot. And he's a great patriot. And he's also done an incredible job with Tesla. People should be going wild. They love the product, but because he's finding all sorts of terrible things that have taken place against our country, they want to penalize him in an economic sense. And I just think that's very unfair.
All right, so Mr. Trump's buying a Tesla. By the way, no leverage. You just go and buy it for cash. Joining us now, House members Claudia Tenney of New York, Anna Paulina Luna of the great state of Florida. Ladies, thank you for coming on. Anna Paulina Luna, you going to buy a Tesla too?
You know, I don't know if Tesla's in my pocketbook price range, but I can tell you that although I love electric cars, I love American muscle more. So I'm hoping Elon eventually becomes a supporter of that.
How about you, Claudia? There's a Tesla waiting in your driveway.
They're very cool. It would not be practical in upstate New York, and I'm hoping when Trump eliminates the Biden-era benefits for buying an EV, and we just compete on the open market with her muscle cars, and I think that would be great. So let's make sure that $7,500 in the excise tax and
This is our 1 gram coin. A lot of you guys have been asking for it because the only coin on our site is quite heavy. So I finally acquired all the pieces to start manufacturing. First, I decided to make it an average size. I got a blanket die made and a collar for stamping. Then I had to decide on a certain design and get all the dies made. The first time we actually tried to produce it, our die got stuck into the collar. If you take a look inside, you can see metal flakes, and that's from the die. I sent it into a shop to get it fixed, and finally, a week later, we were able to start manufacturing. This whole process took about 4 months to finish. Honestly, just a lot of waiting around for parts. And I'll be brutally honest, the manufacturing speed for the 1 grammer is extremely slow. But I'm already in talks with the manufacturer for a faster way of manufacturing. I just need to know if there's enough demand for it first. And if there is demand, get ready to see a new and improved way of manufacturing. For packaging, we're going to maintain this red and golden look, similar to how we sell it now. But the card is going to be in the shape of a credit card and not this plastic film we had last time. I don't have a definite launch date for it. That's her dad in the back, bro. He knows the format.
I know what it is. Why you gorilla gripping your head like that, man? Why you gripping your head?
I like to grip big things.
Bro, he's got one person, bro.
Who's that? Is that your security guard?
Yeah, it's my bodyguard.
Oh, okay. How much you paying? This is my go. So you want Dr. Phil? You the Batman dude. Can you bring my friend on a scale of 1 to 10?
Okay, let me see. Love the full head of hair. Do you want to rate my friend?
No, it's him.
Who is it?
It is him. It is him.
Clinical Pop. That's her dad in the back, bro.
It is.
Nah, bro.
Oh, I know that.
Another episode of How the Hell Do We Make This Funny? It's, I was wondering, I wonder if they had a comedian on the Titanic. It's, do you know Guillermo? No. It's been 7 weeks since Donald Trump took office, and so far it has been much worse than I think anyone thought it would be. We're friends with Russia now. We're dumping the Department of Education. We're forcing ourselves on Canada. The tariff of Nottingham is on quite a tear. Today, Trump announced an additional 25% tariff on all Canadian steel coming into the United States. There he goes again, trying to stop the steal. It's President Zambone had posted about our friends up north. They will pay a financial price for this so big it will be read about in history books for many years to come. The only thing that makes sense is for Canada to become our cherished 51st state. This would make all tariffs and everything else totally disappear. We will have the safest and most beautiful nation anywhere in the world, and your brilliant anthem, O Canada, will continue to play, but now representing a great and powerful state within the greatest nation that the world has ever seen. He's moving on Canada like a bitch, and no one's stopping him. This is how Jafar from Aladdin tried to mate with Princess Jasmine. Jafar Alago here. I honestly believe the first time Trump said he wanted to make Canada a state, he was kidding. But then someone of his lackeys said, well, that's a great idea, Mr. President. And now it's a great idea, even though it is a completely crazy idea that will never, ever happen. It just won't. Why is he spending energy on it? Who voted for this? What happened to the dogs and the cats that were being eaten in Ohio? We never got to the bottom of it. The stock market was down again today. The Dow was down 478 points. Yesterday,
You attacked us first. Now you're begging for mercy. After I killed you. Happy they died.
Alpha Team, this is Chief of Security Blanchard. Are you a sight for sore eyes? I've been holed up in the mansion since yesterday trying to organize a containment response. Now that you're here, let's lock down that AO. I'll track body cams and coordinate.
What about the entry point? Get me back. Your family's fighting. No wonder I couldn't find it.
See? Can't be hungry if you don't have a head. Problem solved.
You and Dean cannot trust anything coming out of your mouth.
Alpha, search the area. We've got 3 Janus Science personnel missing. Their knowledge is critical to mission success, and we take care of our own.
Stop, kid.
exactly. I was hoping she'd give me more information about the system.
You're a team who didn't expect to take on the apocalypse today. You're handling this well.
Which is... It's dark. Somewhere else. Where were you before? What did you do there?
I get a complex because of you. I'm gonna need to switch careers. Seriously, all I do is deal with boxes. You wouldn't try to unlock and lock it for me, would you? You ain't that stupid. He's pretty. Can you tell?
I guess that's all. This is the damage assessment in combat. As for Hunter casualties, there were 4 ethers.
Just give me something that shoots straight and we go.
You'd think it was a common, not one. The decisive factor was an alien.
See, is that so hard? You don't always need to be such a massive twat.
That lines up. So it's a yes. The attack took place 120 kilometers from FT53ugJe5mHGrYUKLHKDHarrjTUi. Should the ants gain any further mastery over flight, it will only be a matter of time before they reach the mainland. Contact Japan and request to join forces. Reach out to our neighbors here. Tell them to raise the threat level ASAP. Yes, sir. You can't put it off. Mine's already against us.
You know exactly what this girl wants.
Therefore, as chairman of the Hunters Association, I hereby initiate the forced Chichen Island raid.
Better I gamble here than some dodgy warehouse poker game. So who fuckers cheat? Rock on. Looks like there'll be no rest till Exfil.
More importantly, how much further is it?
Oh, it's close. Go straight and you'll reach the castle. Then the interior will be yours.
What the blazes have you allowed into our home, Ethel? Are you mad? Even appears that he was mad, but soldiers dwell within his shadow, all of them.
Well, impressed he knows.
At the
Can't
same
tell you
time,
how much I love that
they
one.
attempt to take our castle falsely and death, sir.
Daughter and I have an agreement. Handle the permit for the next floor. Nobody can
Slave, don't rest. Honestly, don't see how we could best someone capable of that.
I'll tell you the same thing I told my ex during my last week's
Nothing
job.
more for my
Real life is screwing me for another day.
I'd like to borrow your daughter.
Ah, you one of your friends today? Is that it?
No, not like that. As a guy, I mean, you check me out for a fun on what you want on this point.
Oh, some guy.
I swear.
Very well.
It's a relief. I was sure you'd have me over a barrel. Again.
Max armor.
Fieldmaster Goto.
Nice. That's what we need for. to him anyway, and that's rounds up my forces pretty well.
Hoping this road would get wider as we went.
Wouldn't you rather keep the treasure?
I brought them to trade. Elite nobles are stewards of the 90th floor and above, and they're strong. Stronger than anything we've faced up to this point by far. And through negotiation, we shall secure the permits the same way you did with my...
Weaker than your Would you ever agree to our deal? That's what I found. Nobles are always trying to climb the hierarchy.
The same way you did with...
I've been weaker than your family's forces. Would you ever agree to our deal? That's what I found. Nobles are always trying to climb the hierarchy ladder, aren't you? How about to put your family right at the top? Granted, whatever, family.
It's for dear. What? Sir Gino, you weren't obligated to spare my family. What made you do it?
Guess it's because I like you. First, you know, now her. Maybe I just get along well with people who have a few toys in the attic. Oh yeah, you can head back now. You said the enemy's up ahead was no joke. And I made a promise to your father. If you tell me where to find the rest of the entry permits, I can take it further.
Hold on. You really must be so useless.
It's not that. I just thought it'd be dangerous. You've done great. Thank you.
All right. In that case, I'm staying with you until the very end. I want to see what you accomplish with my own eyes.
Have it your way. Let's head out.
Onward!
Rapid Response Team Alpha,
That's
Security Chief Blanchard.
I saw a drastic spike in difficulty.
Barricade at the command center.
Each
I'm
of
a
them
little dinged up.
leads.
I'll live.
Strike band
If there's anyone left to save, body cam's live.
I'll keep
eyes on.
That's one step at a time. Who's there? Last ingredient of the medicine. Dead you are. Something. In fact, from the White Tiger, was also in fact, every aspect of the country should receive the invitation.
Which would include
Be advised, we lost contact with 3 of our scientists.
This raid will be an official joint operation between us and our...
Find them, bring them home. We need brain power as much as firepower.
A recent attack by one of these evolved ants on Captain Slim.
Wouldn't try to unlock a knockoff on me, would you? You ain't that stupid. Don't suppose Uncle Sam gives out medals for marksmanship.
It's still under consideration. We got to take too much time to discuss. Hunters deals with flying in. We'll be meeting with
Wouldn't
members
surprise
of
me
the
if this was the
association.
same one that
Discuss
Pandora
strategy.
chick owned.
So this is the top floor.
Sorry you came here yet. But if anyone had to show up, I'm glad it was you.
That's him. The demon monk. That's one talk too more. I can tell this won't be easy.
Your sheer bloodlust is making me weak.
Even Hessel is feeling it. And that creature he's on could be a problem, too. A wyvern. So he commands more than just demons. The gang's all here, huh?
Now would be the time to share.
Yeah, I know!
coming straight from the floors below. The demon monarch Baran isn't just a boss. He's a sovereign. And Sir Gino invaded his castle. He should be eliminated. Who do I side with? Lord Baran or Sir Gino?
That's no ordinary lightning. It's wide-range magic with a stun debuff. I can revive my soldiers. My mana will deplete fast if he keeps using that move. So before he can.
Rapid response team Alpha, Security Chief Blanchard. How copy? I've barricaded the command center.
Those legs!
All right. See if there's
He's
anyone
not
left.
stealth.
Body cam's live. I'll keep eyes on him.
Opening attack! It's gaining on me! Fast!
Max Blanchard Alpha. Regional staffers are missing somewhere in your AO. Locate and extract. I'm counting on their expertise to end this outbreak.
Sorry, but looking up this tower again. Come on, Ross. Find yourself a monarch, right? Fight like one.
Pleasure to meet you all. My name is Hanakawa, and I belong to the Drawn Sword Guild. This is FT53ugJe5mHGrYUKLHKDHarrjTUi, our guild master. I'll be interpreting as he only speaks Japanese.
The Drawn Sword Guild. Japan's largest, and with 11 S ranks, easily their strongest too. Also said to be the second largest in all Asia. Their leader, Ryuji Koto, has an arm that more than lives up to his and his guild's reputation.
First of all, thank you for inviting us to join this new strike team of allied forces. We pledge our support.
We should be the ones thanking you for even agreeing to come. We are truly grateful to you.
As the documents that you received state, we've conducted our own investigation into the winged ants, and it's revealed a fair bit of useful information. If you could all turn your attention to the screen. We've provided a visual to explain two critical points we'd like to touch on. One is their lifespan. The ants grow at an accelerated rate after hatching, but only live for about a year. In other words, once we exterminate the queen, the remaining ants will die off within a year's time. The second point is in regard to their behavior. From the previous 3 raids, we know that the ants are drawn to stronger enemies. The more mana a hunter has, the more attractive the ants are. As such, we'll organize our strategy around that trait and use it against them.
We've been aware of the ants' tendencies for a while now, but they've described it like the elaborate breakdown.
As for the plan, we'll of course need hunters. Of the Drawn Sword Guild's 11 S ranks. And we'll be
Prairie Falls. Population? Well, less than yesterday. Never been so glad to see backup arrive.
Then you're
lucky to stay in one piece. I need you to look for survivors. Subdue any threats. Help me save this town. Copy.
As a estimation, this plan has the highest chances of success in the fewest attacks.
10 S-rank hunters is certainly more than we would be able to do. The choice is simple.
Yes, that could work. If there's no review on focus, let's begin tactical planning for that moment.
So half-assed. Might be worth a closer look.
Time to down a potion.
Listen up. We've got 3
soldiers. Last seen in town. Locating and extracting is now my priority.
God's fatal strike!
I swear this takes longer every time. The boss hates me. Not that I care. Okay, I do care.
You know, here, trust us. Hold them. I can't even explain how.
There goes all my mana.
Honestly, it's not a bad makeover. I think you look great. No, you take all the time you need. It's not like I got other shit to do. Fine. It's all good. Yep.
Shit! My daggers! He's too strong! Oh no! He can't touch it!
If I get a complex because of you, I'm gonna need to switch careers. Seriously, all
We
my
should solve
boss
my
does is
strike and combine it with voltage.
Vessel, head home and give your dad this message. From now on, the Radish family runs this place.
Out there, all around the world, to the Late Show. I'm your host, Stephen Colbert. Folks, I know things seem like they're spinning out of control right now, but I want to reassure you that everything is going to be okay. I want to, but I can't. Because I'm not that good of a liar. All right? By the way, great haircut. Sometimes bangs are too long. Yesterday, the Dow slipped on Trump's tariffs and fell down an elevator shaft. And today, it kept bonking its head on the way down, plunging more than 400 points. In the last 3 weeks in total, the stock market has lost $4 trillion in value, and experts now say the risk of a recession is 40%. And you can tell that even Fox News is taking that seriously because they're already lying about it.
It would be Biden's recession.
Oh, Maria, that excuse is getting harder and harder to make. You going in the bathroom? You may want to give it a minute. Joe Biden was in there about 8 weeks ago. And the Dow may not bounce back anytime soon because Trump's trade war with Canada keeps getting worse. Here's one of the problems. 85% of the electricity we import into the United States comes from Canada. And last night, in response to Trump's tariff threats, Ontario announced a 25% tax increase on electricity exports to the U.S. And that's a shame, because Canadian electricity is clean energy. It's powered by pure, natural beaver and a big wheel. Obviously. That's made up, obviously. Sometimes it's a moose. Obviously, Trump is not pleased with this, so this morning he posted this message based on Ontario, Canada, placing a 25% tariff on electricity coming into the United States. I'm going to stop you right there, okay? Why did he put quotes around electricity? They are taxing, no folks, they're taxing the electricity that powers my phone that I use to talk to my beloved family. So now, he's threatening to take Canadian tariffs to 50% in response. And all this economic chaos has got to be a shock to MAGA voters, because during the whole campaign, every rally, Trump made this promise.
Starting on day one, we will end inflation and make America affordable again.
Yes, day one. Make America affordable again. Or man. And soon that is the sound you'll make when you open your electric bill. Man. So, now, the White House is scrambling to convince the American people that bad economic news is actually just part of the plan. One White House aide said, it's hard to rip the Band-Aid off without getting some blood everywhere. You know things are on the right track when your explanation involves the phrase, blood everywhere. And I'm no doctor, and not to quibble, but if there's blood shooting out, maybe it's not time to rip the Band-Aid off. Maybe it's time to put on a second Band-Aid, or call me crazy. Or maybe bring in somebody who knows how to fix the old blood hole, instead of trusting the guy with a hat that says, make America blood everywhere. Well, there is a silver lining on the implosion of the world economy. It's bad for Elon Musk, too.
The House of Representatives narrowly passed a short-term funding bill almost completely along party lines. The measure now heads to the Senate, where Democratic support will be necessary to meet the 60-vote threshold it needs to pass. They have until late Friday to figure it out, or the government will shut down. Also this evening, the Department of Education began a mass layoff of more than 1,300 people. Notices went out after employees were sent home and agency offices were closed for what they said were security reasons. And the United States resumed intelligence sharing and military aid for Ukraine after Kyiv said it was ready to accept a 30-day ceasefire proposal. That announcement came during negotiations in Saudi Arabia. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said it is now up to Russia to do the same. With that, let's get smarter with the help of our leadoff panel, and I got some great people here in D.C. Jeff Mason is here, White House correspondent from Reuters, Leanne Caldwell, Chief Washington correspondent for Puck News, and Michael McFaul, former U.S. ambassador to Russia and MSNBC international affairs analyst. Michael, you know we're going to you first. What is your reaction to Ukraine saying it is ready to accept the 30-day ceasefire plan?
Well, they had no choice. I mean, you just announced it. They cut off the military assistance. They cut off intelligence assistance. This is coercive diplomacy at its worst. And so the Ukrainians came in and they accepted the deal. They don't want this deal. I want to be clear. They want a ceasefire with security guarantees. Because they've had ceasefires in the past. But Putin and Zelensky sat down and signed one in 2019, and Putin invaded 3 years later. But today they had no choice, and now the ball's in the court of Vladimir Putin. Will he sign up as well?
Wouldn't Trump argue that's the U.S. winning? Ukraine didn't have a winning hand. The U.S. did. We got what we wanted, and in the end, there may be a ceasefire.
That's what he's arguing, but I want to argue back and say no. That's not negotiating a good deal that's win-win for both sides. That's forcing them to surrender. And if we really wanted to do a deal that would be good for Ukraine, we would be providing more military assistance. We would be providing more sanctions
against Russia, and then we would negotiate different concessions. Instead, the Trump administration has given Putin everything in the front. You can't be in NATO, Ukraine. You have to give up territory. We're not going to participate in any peacekeeping operation, and done nothing demanded nothing in return from Putin. I don't know. That's diplomacy 101. You trade your cards. You try to get concessions. Right now, they're just forcing the Ukrainians to end. And now, I suspect Putin will go along, by the way, because he's gotten everything he's desired so far.
Well, let's talk about him, because Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, right, a longtime friend of Donald Trump, big-time real estate developer, is headed to Moscow to meet with Putin. He met with him a month ago as well. Do we really think that this guy, again, a real estate developer, is the right person to go one-on-one with Vladimir Putin?
Well, I'm not going to judge his credentials, but I have negotiated with Vladimir Putin. I've been on the other side of his negotiating team. They're tough negotiators. They're going to pocket concessions and ask for more. You're already seeing that from Putin. He's already pocketed the fact that they're going to get the territory that they wanted. He's already pocketed that Ukraine is not going to be a member of NATO. And next, he's going to ask for more territory. He's going to ask for Zelensky to be removed. He's going to ask for the Ukrainian army to be capped at 100,000. And what I want to hear from the Trump administration is, what are you demanding of Putin to get a fair and just ceasefire? That's what we haven't heard yet. We've heard all the things Ukrainians have to do. We've heard nothing that Vladimir Putin has to do.
All right, let's talk about a new topic, the trade war with Canada. Okay, I want to share what the White House has said and really get this quote right. The White House says that Donald Trump leveraged the American economy to deliver a win for the American people by getting Ontario to back down on the electricity surcharge. Are you for real? Like, this argument has always been Donald Trump isn't necessarily going to impose tariffs. These are negotiating tactics, and he's going to roll up with his boss energy. But in the end, we're not getting any big win here.
Well, and there were lots of losses in the market as a result of that back and forth. The president responding to the bluster, I guess, or the threat from Canada, from the Premier of Ontario, by saying, we're going to make these tariffs on Canada go up to 50% starting tomorrow. And then back and forth. I was outside for the, shall we say, car sale event at the White House earlier, and I asked him about it then. I said he was very pleased to hear that the Ontario Premier had decided to backtrack, and I asked him, does that mean you're going to backtrack on tariffs? And he said, probably.
Okay, but
they did.
Okay, but here's the thing. Of course the president said that. And the White House is going to say, we're winning. But aren't they struggling to prove that point? Look at the markets. Yeah. Right? The White House likes to say, what's happening in the markets is just a snapshot of the moment. But the way markets work, they're not a snapshot of this moment. Markets are based on a future assumption of what things are going to look like. And when the markets continue to tumble, that's saying they don't believe in Donald Trump. So who's the White House convincing? Do Republicans on the Hill buy that this tariff dance is working?
Republicans on the Hill are quite nervous, especially when Donald Trump over the weekend said that he would not rule out a recession, the dreaded R word. Republicans tell me that they've asked the administration for more details. They want to know what the reason is for these tariffs specifically, because there's been all sorts of reasons. They want to know what the plan is post-tariff, and they're not getting a lot of answers right now, and that is very concerning to Republicans on Capitol Hill. I talked to some aides today who say that one thing that they're also concerned about is future investment in the country, that these tariffs are actually going to scare off investors. And so that also is going to have real impact on the economy. They're willing to give him some time.
Well, today, Donald Trump backed down. Big surprise. Don?
Back to where we started this hour. President Trump and Elon Musk speaking at the White House earlier, and Democrats still melting down over Doge. But it's not just Washington going after Elon Musk. He's taking hits left and right from all over the country. And that brings me to today's big three. Elon Musk is being painted as an oligarch, a would-be kleptocrat, that he wants to raid the government and make himself richer. This is the explanation for his motivations from those on the left.
Come together in a strong grassroots movement and say no to oligarchy.
Are we going to shut down the illegal Elon Musk takeover of the government? You bet we are.
I saw a sign in the crowd that said Doge stands for dangerous oligarchs grab at everything. Elon Musk needs to keep his grubby hands, his greedy grubby hands, off of our government.
Elon, take your musty million and musty Moscow rights to the moon.
If Elon Musk is looking to raid the government and steal for more wealth, it's not going well for Elon Musk. Year to date, since he's joined in helping the administration do the Department of Government Efficiency, he's lost almost $103 billion in net worth. His current net worth is $324 billion. That's down from well over $400 billion at the beginning of this year. He's made big financial sacrifices. There's also small sacrifices. There's been damage and vandalism all over the country when it comes to Tesla. Molotov cocktails tossed into dealerships, charging stations burned down. Sheryl Crow waving goodbye in a big production and saying goodbye to her Tesla. And the sacrifice has particularly affected Tesla. Last week was its 7th straight week of losses. Monday, the stock dropped by 15%. That's the biggest one-day drop since September. The 7th worst day in the history. The current stock price is $229. That's down from what was at one point something like $440 per share. So why would Elon Musk make all of these sacrifices? What is driving him? Well, he sat down with Larry Kudlow. Listen.
It's tough sledding. But I think we're doing the right thing here. It's a $2 trillion deficit. It keeps growing. Our interest payments are higher than our Defense Department budget. That's I think was the real wake-up call for me. I mean, really, I just don't want America to go bankrupt.
So it's a call to action. You feel you're hearing that call to action?
Yeah.
You giving up your other stuff? I mean, how are you running your other businesses?
With great difficulty. Yeah, I mean...
But there's no turning back, you're saying?
I'm just here trying to make government more efficient, eliminate waste and fraud, and so far we're making good progress, actually.
That difficulty, I think, helps explain Donald Trump's appearance with Elon Musk today in front of Teslas. Trump also posted on Truth Social, Elon Musk is putting it on the line in order to help our nation. He's doing a fantastic job. But the radical left lunatics, as they often do, are trying to illegally, inclusively boycott Tesla, one of the world's great automakers, and Elon's baby, in order to attack and do harm to Elon and everything he stands for. Why should he be punished for putting his tremendous skills to work in order to help make America great again? There are many things that motivate people. Wealth is only but one. There is power and there is fame. But from my estimation, Elon Musk had power, fame, and wealth well before deciding to join the Trump administration and guide up Doge. No, in fact, if you look right now what this has done for him personally, I only see sacrifice. And therefore we must consider the possibility that much like putting a man on Mars or electrifying vehicles across the world, Elon Musk sees this as a great mission to put the United States on sound financial footing.
Coming up on Clover Cards, we fly from LA to Texas to take on the Dallas Card Show, and let's just say this show was poncho mayhem. We buy ponchos, we sell ponchos, we trade ponchos, and to complete the quadfecta, we flip for ponchos. Buckle up for 40 minutes of Pokemon deals totaling to well over 50K. We're going to hop right into our first deal of the event, negotiating with a vendor where we're hoping to secure a nice lot of slabs.
I know it says 6 feet, don't know 600. We just figure something out. When I priced it all out, I got 1875 sticker. And then obviously I'll pay cash. See what we can do. What are you looking at? We do 15 cash. Let's see. How about 16? How many of the Pop Series packs do you have? I have 3. Give me 2 and I'll do 16. I'll do 2. Beautiful. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. All right. Take care. All right. The ice is broken. The ice is broken. First deal of the day. That's my favorite card from that lot. Dark Charizard. PSA 10. Should I be aggressive and start clearing stuff, or what's your? You don't want to hold? I got the national in a couple of weeks. I don't really want to wholesale a ton out. Some stuff I work with, but I'm running out of places to buy stuff. What are those piles? Random ass piles that didn't fit. Okay. I figure when it gets cleared out, these are restocks. That's cool. Yeah. Like X-Mania, right? It's not crap. It's not. Yeah, it's cool stuff. Instead of me having to dig through the boxes to find stuff to restock it, I just. Yep. People can pick it out.
It was yet another day of tariff whiplash brought on by President Trump. It all started with a Truth Social post by the president escalating his trade war with Canada. Trump threatened to double tariffs on steel and aluminum imports after the Ontario Premier put a retaliatory surcharge on electricity used by more than 1 million Americans. The president also suggested, again, that the only solution was for Canada to become America's 51st state. Well, those comments roiled the stock market for a second day in a row, causing mass chaos, only for Trump to walk back his threat hours later, saying he'd probably reconsider his decision after the Ontario Premier agreed to suspend that surcharge and meet with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick later this week. My panel is back with me, Catherine Rampell, Eugene Daniels, and Tim O'Brien. Eugene, how did we get here?
Trump might roll back the tariffs. It's going to be like this every day from now on, forever. You guys know that, right? Trump might, he might not. Will they? Won't they? 5 seasons, then they kiss. It'll be like this forever. His economic advisor, or Secretary of the Treasury, was like, maybe he'll negotiate with Trudeau, and they'll kick it off or whatever. Trump apparently has given a 1-month exemption to automakers from the tariffs, which is really funny that he would do this like after putting the tariffs forward. So the automakers had like 1 day of a bump, and then on day 2 they were like, automakers have urged Trump to waive 25% tariffs. Do you think salvage denim makers would be able to levy the same pressure, perhaps? Maybe? Probably not. Justin Trudeau of Canada called me to ask what could be done about tariffs. I told him that many people have died from fentanyl that came through the borders of Canada and Mexico, and nothing has convinced me that it is stopped. He said that it's gotten better, but I said, that's not good enough. The call ended in a somewhat friendly manner. He was unable to tell me when the Canadian election has taken place, which made me curious, like, what's going on here? I then realized he is trying to use this issue to stay in power. Good luck, Justin. That's fantastic. Yeah, I don't know if the tariffs are going to come off. The exemption to, automakers is pretty funny. Why are there no capitalized words in Trump's paragraph? That's true. He probably didn't type this. He loves his capitalized words. Yeah, you should really only, listen, okay?
All hell just broke loose at a House hearing after Sarah McBride is accurately called Mr. Himself, referred to transgender Representative Sarah McBride as Mr. McBride. The incident illustrates the tensions between gender. Okay.
I now recognize the representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ranking Member Keating, also wonderful.
Mr. Chairman, could you repeat your introduction again, please?
Yes, it's we have set the standard on the floor of the House, and I'm simply...
What is that standard, Mr. Chairman? Would you repeat what you just said when you introduced a duly elected representative from the United States of America? Please.
I will. The representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Mr. Chairman, you are out of order. Mr. Chairman, have you no decency? I mean, I've come to know you a little bit, but this is not decent.
We will continue this.
You will not continue it with me unless you introduce a duly elected representative the right way.
This hearing is adjourned.
Yeah, this is going to keep getting worse. And government employees are instructed to call people by their sex. This is a direct order from the commander-in-chief and should be obeyed whether they like it or not. The fact is that you're right.
Okay. They've done a great job. A lot of them.
It's the kind of whiplash Donald Trump is known for. Heated threats, a quick retreat, uncertainty, and instability ruling the day. All starting on social media, with Trump promising an additional 25% tariff to 50% on all steel and aluminum coming into the United States from Canada. Offended apparently by Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who imposed an energy surcharge as part of Canada's retaliation plan.
If the United States escalates, I will not hesitate to shut the electricity off completely.
The White House press secretary calling Ford's words egregious and insulting.
There would be grave consequences imposed on Canada if they think about shutting off electricity.
The White House then suggesting annexation as a solution to these Canada-U.S. tensions.
And I actually looked into some of the research about the cost of living in Canada, and the cost of living is much higher than it is here. The president has made it clear that he believes Canadians would be better served economically, militarily, if they were to become the 51st state of the United States of America.
As the briefing wrapped up, there was word of a breakthrough. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick called Premier Ford with a request to drop the energy surcharge in exchange for in-person meetings this week, a deal the Premier accepted.
I've agreed to suspend temporarily, we always have that tool in our toolkit, until we sit down over the next day or two.
Already candidate I respect very much.
The Ford phone call seemed to please Trump, standing beside Elon Musk at an unusual event to boost his car company Tesla. The president hinted he was open to relief.
That's good.
50%, is that going to go into effect on Canada or no?
Which one?
The 50% tariffs?
I'll let you know about it.
Okay.
I'll let you know.
Though he again suggested the long-term solution here is annexation.
When you take away that artificial line that looks like it was done with a ruler, and that's what it was. Some guy sat there years ago and they said, "Rah." But when you take away that and you look at that beautiful formation of Canada and the United States, there is no place anywhere in the world that looks like that.
Trump would revert back to his original threat, the White House confirming a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum with no exceptions or exemptions. Amid this chaos, Trump had to face American business leaders who are urgently seeking clarity. But instead, the president offered more mixed messages.
They don't want to pay 25% or whatever it may be. It may go up higher. Maybe go up higher.
Trump is urging Americans to be patient, even as he warns of what he calls disturbances to the cost of living. He insists tariffs will force companies to build factories in the U.S. And once that starts happening, he claims the economy will boom.
But Katie, it's pretty clear that some economic measures are definitely not booming. Investors sure seem to be jittery.
Yeah, the markets remain volatile. The S&P
President Trump now saying he will double tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel imports. He says it's a response to Ontario. The province of Ontario placing a 25% surcharge on electricity coming into 3 U.S. neighboring states. And joining us now.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me know,
Rapid
and
response
it's
team Alpha.
disappointing.
Security
I'll
Chief
tell you the
Blanchard.
reason
I'll copy.
it's disappointing because
Barricaded the command
Americans
center.
are going to
Got a little banged up.
they
I'll live.
capacity,
See if there's anyone left to say.
capacity
Body
of
cams
producing
live.
16%
I'll keep eyes on
of the aluminum they need. Pretty much the balance comes 60% comes from Quebec. So costs are going to go up. Along with aluminum and steel. Let's focus on the real problem, and that's China. Bringing transshipments in and costing American and Canadian jobs. I want to make sure that we send more electricity. I want to send more critical minerals. But there was an unprovoked attack on Canada, on jobs, on businesses. For what reason? The market's speaking loud and clear. Consumer confidence is down. The market's tumbling. There's going to be plants closed in the U.S. Assembly plants will shut down because they won't have the aluminum, or they'll be paying twice, 3 times as much. This is absolute chaos created by one person, and that's Donald Trump, not the American people. I always say Canadians love Americans. I love Americans, and this has to stop. Let's sit around the table and negotiate a new deal, even though he created the deal in the first place.
Yeah, and as someone who grew up in Western New York and Buffalo on the border with Canada, I can honestly say I love Canadians as well. Talk a little bit about Ontario, your province, and the electrical power it shares with the states in the United States along the border. A lot of it is coming from Ontario, right?
Better I gamble here
That's correct.
warehouse poker game.
Businesses in New York and Michigan and in Minnesota. I just got off the phone with Governor Whitmer.
What's the
I
catch?
consider her a friend.
Sorry.
We worked together for 7 years. She's a wonderful person, and I apologize to her. She understands. But what I recommend is on the electricity bill, put down this increase is a tariff from Trump. It's a Trump tariff, which is basically a Trump tax.
As you know, you call this an unprovoked trade and tariff war initiated by the United States against Canada. Trump is saying that Canada pays very little for national security and relies on the U.S. for military protection. What's your response to him on that issue?
I agree that we have to meet our 2% commitment, our NATO commitment. I've said it for years. Other premiers all signed an agreement sending it to the federal government. We spend 1.4% on defense. It needs to go up to 2%. We have to pitch in our share. 100% I agree on the 2%.
Yeah, that's what he's been saying now for the last several years. The NATO allies have to increase their spending to come up to what the U.S. percentage of military spending is. His latest Truth Social post earlier today, Premier, also doubled down on Trump's desire for Canada to become the 51st state of the United States, saying the brilliant "O Canada" anthem will continue to play. How do Canadians feel about what the President Trump is saying about Canada becoming part of the United States and even allowing "O Canada," a beautiful national anthem, to continue playing?
Well, obviously the Canadians are infuriated, and what it's done, it's united the whole country, and the patriotism is running wild across the country. The likes I've never seen before in my entire life. We'll never become the 51st state. Canada's not for sale, and we want a great trading partner. We have the greatest neighbors in the world, the U.S., and it's not the American people. They didn't vote President Trump in on this type of mandate. He had a mandate to lower inflation, lower cost of living, create more jobs, and it's backfired on him. Inflation's going up. Jobs will be lost. He's taking more money out of Americans' pockets. For what reason? We're still trying to figure this out. Let's sit down at the table and negotiate this deal. If there's things he doesn't like, then we sit down and we have a conversation. But just going tit for tat, back and forth, all it does is hurt Americans and Canadians. It's unacceptable.
Before I let you go, Premier, I want to ask one final question. Trump is calling on Canada to drop its tariff on dairy products. Is this a realistic request?
Well, it's one of the items that obviously gets under his skin. Let's sit down and talk about it. That is as simple as that. Let's renegotiate the USMCA. Let's stop the bleeding on both sides of the border as China's sitting there laughing at both countries. Let's sit down and negotiate a fair trade for both countries, and everyone benefits.
Yeah, it's amazing what's going on. Hard to believe. As a kid growing up in Buffalo, New York, along the border with Canada, whenever I would go to a Buffalo Sabres hockey game, they'd always play the U.S. national anthem, but they would always play "O Canada" as well, because so many of the hockey players, almost all of them, were Canadians. I just remember that as a kid growing up. Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, thanks very much for joining us.
We thought it would help to give a bit of a debrief, catch you up. President Trump started his tariff tango with Mexico, Canada, and China on January 31st. He paused it 3 days later for 1 month. The next day, China tariffs took effect. Canada and Mexico followed in March, but just a day after those tariffs took effect, the president announced a carve-out for automakers. A day after that, a 1-month delay for other products. On March 7th, he threatened reciprocal tariffs on Canadian dairy and lumber. That brings us to the announcement that we have been telling you about this morning on steel and aluminum. Okay, digest all that for a second, and now we're going to get an explanation and the ramifications politically from our talented group of reporters here, Sabrina Rodriguez of the Washington Post, CNN's David Chalian, and CNN's Jeff Zeleny. You catch all that? Wow. David Chalian, I'm going to start with you because it is confusing. It is uncertain. It is trademark Donald Trump to govern by chaos, as we've said time and time again. But it is also trademark Donald Trump to care about the markets.
Well, I think that's why you saw some of that whiplash.
Yeah.
And some of that was in response to the markets, right? Not just to inject chaos for chaos' sake. I know he told reporters last week he doesn't watch the markets. I just,
And there's a bridge he can buy.
Exactly. There's absolutely no truth to that. And, he's going later to talk to the Business Roundtable. And, he is clearly getting a lot of input, not just from Republicans on Capitol Hill, but from a lot of the high-dollar donor business people, business community. These folks have inputs into Donald Trump. And I talked to some Wall Street folks, both supporters of the president and not supporters of the president, all of whom work for, these big banks, financial institutions, who say that there's a mood shift right now, and there's real concern in the marketplace. I mean, we see it obviously in what the Dow is doing, but there's a real concern that there is not a long-term plan here.
I'm going to say this at risk of my job, Kelly, but what President Trump is doing is insane. It is absolutely insane. It is about the 8th reason we've had for the tariffs, and now he's saying he's putting 50% tariffs on Canada unless they agree to become the 51st state. That is insane. There is just no other way of describing it. And the trouble, Kelly, is that it shows there are no bounds around President Trump. This is very different from the first administration, where there were people around him who seemed to, I don't know what the word is, but smooth over some of the edges now. And the other thing that's not talked about, Kelly, is what's going on within the administration in terms of how they're treating the Constitution and laws. I think all of that is bad for the attraction of capital. And the gentleman from Bridgewater is 100% right. We need massive amounts of capital if we want to fund our deficits, pay for the things we want to pay for, sell our bonds, and have high stock prices. And it seems as if this administration is doing everything it can to chase foreign capital away.
Well, the view, of course, has been one of shock and outrage, as you can imagine. The part of the complexity here is it would make sense for our political leaders to actually be working towards renegotiating USMCA early, actually putting everything on the table and saying, all right, what's the real agenda? What would you like, and how do we renegotiate it? The problem is none of our leadership really wants to be seen to be backing down or even be conciliatory in the face of threats to annex our country. And we don't know how serious those threats are, but we're being made to understand that we should take them seriously. So it puts us in a bit of a box. We'd like our leaders to be able to negotiate because that seems like the rational course. It seems as though the old way of trading is over. But politically, it's hard to make nice with this president right now.
Apparently, his talk of annexing Canada, making it a 51st state, is something that he talks about publicly and privately. It came up with Mr. Trudeau earlier this week. What are the private conversations like in terms of how to deal with Trump?
They have varied over time. I remember much of the outgoing administration here, Prime Minister Trudeau and his cabinet, dealt with the president in his first term, and they renegotiated a major trade deal. They renegotiated NAFTA. So they knew how they thought to deal with him, and you do deal with him with strength. So what you're seeing by way of these countervailing or reciprocatory tariffs is a show of strength on our part, because that's the understanding of what we need to do here. It might backfire, it might not. What we aren't going to see are Canadian politicians who just lay down, because as I say, when you hear talk of crossing borders, whether it's Greenland or Panama or Canada, it sort of behooves our leadership to stand up to that. And what we're hearing, and it's now becoming more and more public by our political leadership, is take this seriously. This isn't actually just empty. And then the question goes, and I'll turn it back to you and the American citizens, including your members of Congress, how serious do we take it? What is the rule of law around this kind of thing in the States? But at the moment, it would be ideal if we could contain this to a trade issue that we need to negotiate.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the open question here as well. I guess the last thing I would ask you is how has it changed how the Canadian people see the American people?
People to people, not in any way, I would say, in the sense that a lot of Canadians live in the States some of the time. Many Canadians work in the States. We have friends and family. We, of course, love America and have respected and appreciated it for thousands of years, for hundreds and hundreds of years. The trouble, of course, is it's hard to divorce those feelings from how we feel about your government. And I can tell you in a very personal way, I can be rational about this as a business journalist and look at the issues for what they are, which is, there are some grains of truth in what the Trump administration is saying about trade, manufacturing, jobs, how you might do things differently. We may be in a new era of trade, and it's important for Canada to accept that. But when it comes to somebody talking about taking over your country, the feelings you have as a reaction aren't very journalistic. They're just human, and you get a kind of a moral outrage. So Canadians will be fighting some of that. Look for it in your tourism data. Look for it in people choosing to stay home instead of going south, because you might see more of that, unfortunately.
I mean, I think this builds to something, Annie, that we're seeing in every economic indicator. And it's that Trump was lying to his supporters in the country when he said that his initial goals would be a white-hot economy.
Guys, Trump is backing down. Just in a matter of hours. I played you that there, but the culmination of it, guys, because Canada stood strong, as people are saying, elbows up, coined by the NDP, not the Liberals or the Conservatives, but the NDP, the party that Canadians should vote for. That's my position. But the bigger point is that Canadians are standing up together. Again, I'm an NDP supporter. I'm voting NDP in the next election. But this is very rare for me to share Doug Ford and not be criticizing him. And I think Trump realizes, or Trump's advisors, maybe the least dumb people in the room, are saying, sir, you've united a country. You've taken a country that was pretty divided on a lot of important questions. And they're still kind of divided on those important questions. And you've unified them. So your 50% tariff you wanted to throw on tomorrow, you got to back down. And in a rare moment of relative non-insanity for Trump, he listened. So keep this in mind. Everyone is against him. Canadians, millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of Americans, the business news, his advisors, I guarantee you behind closed doors, no one is with you, Donald. Stop this madness now.
Started with a sort of mysterious notice this afternoon, a reference to security concerns that went out to all employees at the U.S. Department of Education. Quote, beginning today at 6 p.m., all Education Department offices will be closed for security reasons. Employees must vacate the building by that time. This notice also said all Education Department offices would be closed tomorrow and no employees would be allowed in. Now, this notice had no details about what these security reasons were. But it was pretty clear what was coming. After all, we've been through this a couple of times already now. It was just over a month ago when people who work at USAID got an email saying their office would be closed the next day and they shouldn't come to work. That was right before Trump set about completely dismantling that whole agency. Employees at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, same thing, sent a very similar note saying their office would be shut for the following week, just as the White House ordered the entire agency to stop all of its work. And sure enough, tonight, just after the 6 p.m. deadline for Education Department workers to vacate their offices because of some security concern, Trump Education Secretary, the billionaire pro wrestling executive Linda McMahon, announced that her department is cutting its workforce in half. They will begin firing more than 1,300 people from the Education Department tonight. And then, of course, she went straight to Fox News.
That was the president's mandate. This directive to me clearly is to shut down the Department of Education, which we know we'll have to work with Congress, to get that accomplished. But what we did today was to take the first step of eliminating what I think is bureaucratic bloat. And that's not to say that a lot of the folks, it's a humanitarian thing too. A lot of the folks that are there, they're out of a job. But we wanted to make sure that we kept all of the right people and the good people.
If you find yourself starting to feel a little tug on your heartstrings for those 1,300 people who are out of a job tonight at the Education Department, don't worry. We kept all the good people. We kept all the good people. The 1,300 people who are getting fired tonight, they just aren't. They're not good. They're not good. Who is this for? The vast majority of the American people do not want this. A poll earlier this month, Reuters Ipsos, found that fully 66% of Americans oppose abolishing the Education Department. Nearly half of Americans strongly oppose it, while only 16% are strongly in favor of it. This is not something Americans want, but Donald Trump is trying to do it anyway, apparently starting with firing fully half the people who work at that agency tonight. This is from NPR on the Trump administration's announcement tonight that they're firing 1,300 people from the U.S. Department of Education. Quote, AFGE, American Federation of Government Employees, Local 252, a union that represents Education Department employees, released a statement in which its president, Sharia Smith, said, "We will fight these draconian cuts." Minutes later, AFGE Local 252 told NPR that Sharia Smith was laid off, along with all 5 of the chapter's other union officers. Joining us now is Sharia Smith. She's president of the union representing 2,800 employees at the Education Department. She served our country as an attorney for the Education Department's Office of Civil Rights until this evening. Ms. Smith, thank you so much for being here on Tonight of All Nights. I am sorry for what you're going through.
Thank you so much, Rachel. My coworkers and I from all over the country really appreciate the platform you're giving us to talk about this.
Is it the case that your whole office is being closed and your colleagues, all of your colleagues at your office are being fired as well, the whole thing?
That's so interesting that you asked the question about our whole office. So we've reviewed the list of people who are set to be laid off. And I also listened to Secretary McMahon's statement about how they're keeping the good people. The people that they seem to be keeping are white men who happen to have graduated from very conservative schools. Not to say that they're not good. I think all of my coworkers are excellent. Many of them are members. But the coworkers that are being laid off as well are also good. What is curious in the U.S. Department of Education is that the layoffs, the mass terminations, the administrative leaves are seeming to affect and impact disproportionately women and people of color. And the Department of Education should be a model employer. And I want American people to think about, do they want their employer to follow this model where the only people that are deemed good enough to keep their jobs and their ability to support their families are people who are from a certain race and are of a certain gender.
I know that this has all just happened in the last few hours, but with what they've been telegraphing about their plans for the Education Department, I know that you and your union colleagues and your colleagues at work more broadly have to have been expecting the worst. Do you believe that your union or that the employees more broadly have recourse to fight these firings and have recourse to fight their efforts to abolish the department?
Well, absolutely, because their efforts are illegal. again, since the new administration came into office, we have experienced mass terminations and unchecked unprofessionalism, and people just not going by the rules. Even this layoff is not something that should have occurred. The layoff was not because of a budget shortfall. The president can't just lay people off because he does not agree with them or he does not like the color of their skin or their gender. So certainly we are availing ourselves for, of all recourse to challenge this, and talking with attorneys, and we have been since the first round of layoffs on January 21st. And so, we'll be fighting, and we hope the American people will fight with us.
Linda McMahon, in explaining what she's doing here, has also said that the American people should expect that there will be no interruption to any of the programs that the Education Department administers. I have to ask you if that is possible with what they're planning tonight, with half the workforce gone overnight.
Absolutely not possible. Since January 21st, our entire agency has been interrupted. We've been told not to work. We've had people who have been forced from working, even though there have been high performers. There's no way, we were already understaffed. There is no way we can continue operations at the levels that we had been when you have half the workforce and you have fired great people. You have fired high performers. There's no way. If you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn.
Sheree Smith is the president of the AFGE union that represents Education Department employees. She's an attorney for the Education Department's Office for Civil Rights. She was fired this evening, but as she says, she believes that she and her colleagues have absolute recourse to fight back against these firings as illegal. Ms. Smith, again, I am sorry for what you and your colleagues are going through tonight. Thank you for taking the time to talk us through it, and please stay in touch with us as this proceeds. I know this won't be the last we'll be hearing from you.
Thank you, Rachel.
All right. Good luck to you. I want to bring in NBC's Kelly O'Donnell, who's covering the White House. Julie Sirkin is on Capitol Hill with me. In studio, former Florida Republican Congressman David Jolly, an MSNBC political analyst, and Michael Hardaway, former communications director for House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Okay, Congressman, judging by the number of standing O's, I kept looking to see if somebody counted them. I didn't see a number, but there were a lot of them. Republicans are 100% on board with what the president was saying last night. But the other side of that is, we clearly know they're getting an earful, at least some of them are, from their constituents. So the Wall Street Journal said Trump is testing Americans' appetite for upheaval. Is he?
Sure. Yeah, look, Republicans are entirely on board, which also means Republicans own it, and they own this environment. And I think two things where last night may not have really landed, and I think we're going to see over the next 60, 90 days what happens. The American people fundamentally want a government that works, and they want an economy that grows. And what Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing with Doge is not just laying off and firing federal employees, they're disrupting federal services. And at some point, the consumers of those federal services are going to say, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this. And then secondly, Donald Trump's economy, it's now his economy, is teetering on a real backslide here. The notion of stagflation now in conversation is absolutely real based on the Atlanta Fed's model. We'll see if that occurs or not, but inflation going up and seeing the economy in negative growth territory, if we see that, Donald Trump can no longer blame Joe Biden for that. And frankly, Donald Trump is contributing to the economic uncertainty with tariffs and some of the other moves he's making. So what we saw last night was a lot of truthful hyperbole, Donald Trump's words from his own book. You can call it lies if you want. This was not the most successful 100 days in the history of the country. It was anything but. He's disrupted the most important security alliance on the world stage. Ultimately, the American voters, as consumers of this administration, are going to realize the government's not working for me,
and I'm no longer economically confident like I was when Joe Biden left office. Republicans in the chamber that were giving him the standing ovations are going to own that as much as the president does.
So, Michael, if you buy this thesis that patience of the American people is wearing thin, or at least starting to wear thin, what do Democrats do about it?
We have to tell the story. Donald Trump came in and said he'll drive down inflation and drive down prices. He's done the opposite. Our retirement accounts are in the free fall. You've got the price of eggs going up, the price of gas going up.
But he said that's because of Joe Biden.
Of course, but that doesn't matter. He's owning this economy because he said that I have a mandate and they control the government. I think voters are smart, and they're smart enough to know that this is Donald Trump's economy. When they go to the store every day and eggs are $11, that is problematic. You fill up the tank, you can't afford $4 or $5 gas, and that is a real issue here.
So, Kelly, where is the administration putting its focus now?
Well, certainly, Chris, part of what they want to do is things like getting the tax cuts that the president talked about renewed in a permanent way. He laid some of that out last night. One of the things that was striking about his extensive address to Congress, the longest in history that we've been recording these, is that he talked very little in the grand sweep of his remarks about what he needs Congress to do. There were a few instances of that, but so often this kind of a speech in the chamber, speaking to both parts of Congress, the Senate and the House, is imploring them to go along with the president to get more done. There was some of that, but not as much as we typically would hear from presidents. In many ways, the president was stitching together his first term and his new term just weeks into office and touting achievements. Part of that is certainly setting the stage for framing his own time in office. He did that extensively. Here's a part of how he took credit and claimed credit for many of the things that he is doing and tried to put a stamp on what he wants to do going forward.
It has been nothing but swift and unrelenting action to usher in the greatest and most successful era in the history of our country. And what makes it even more impressive is that, do you know who number 2 is? George Washington. How about that?
So through all of that, you get a sense of how the president has a very expansive view of executive power. And while he was happy to have the applause and to use the Democrats to call them out and to highlight the disruptions, he very much is emphasizing that he has a central role in American life now and that he believes he can use that force of both voter support and certainly the support he's seeing in Congress to try to continue to make sweeping changes and to claim big credit for them. Chris?
Thanks so much for that, Kelly. All right, Julie, take us inside Capitol Hill. We know conservative Republicans are meeting with the president today to talk about his agenda and government funding. What are they walking into?
Well, they're walking into the meeting with an expectation that when they're walking out of the White House, they better come around to supporting the year-long clean continuing resolution that many of them have never voted for during their time in Congress. These are fiscal conservatives. These are members of the House Freedom Caucus. So many of them, like Chip Roy, for example, are vehemently opposed to any kind of continuing resolutions. This time around, though, we've already heard a softening in their tone when it comes to that, and it's in large part because Republicans have a strategy of trying to ice Senate Democrats out of this equation. We've been hearing for the last 2 weeks that House Democrats, including the top appropriator in the House, Rosa DeLauro, saying that she will not vote for a bill like this. They want to get certain guarantees, for example, that the administration will actually spend the funds that Congress appropriates. Well, to get around that and to get around Johnson's very razor-thin majority, what the Speaker is trying to do is to work with Trump and to work with the administration to force these House conservatives to support the CR so that when it makes its way to the Senate, they don't really need to rely on any Democrats. Of course, in the Senate, they require a 60-vote threshold. You're going to need Democratic support regardless, which will put them in a bind. Democrats historically not in favor of shutting down governments. And of course, these conservatives, what they were really looking for is that the DOJ cuts be codified in any such continuing resolution. It seems like the president had convinced them to walk off of that ledge. And when it comes to DOJ, by the way, I should note that Elon Musk had just entered the Senate Republican lunch to talk about his process on the cuts. Tonight, he'll also be meeting with House Republicans to address some of their concerns. So a lot of moving parts here, Chris.
Always moving parts. Thank you so much for that, Julie. But Congressman, can Republicans navigate that in any way? If you've been there,
If you have a bunch of constituents and they're not happy with you, they're not happy with the way government is going, they're not happy with the way their lives are going,
Right.
what's your option here?
And we haven't seen the worst yet. I want to add a coda to what Julie's saying, because this is important about trying to get the budget done. The budget is 6 months overdue. An annual budget. October 1 is the start of the fiscal year. This is March 1. This Republican Congress has failed already at governing, and they're about to say, okay, we're going to put a Band-Aid on it. Now,
but to be fair, the Band-Aids have been pretty frequent in recent years. It's like, the deadline is a suggestion.
It used to be October 1, the fiscal year got pushed to Christmas, right? And then it was January. Now it's March, and they still don't have an answer. And oh, by the way, this fiscal year, the deadline is September 30th, but they haven't even started that process yet. What does all that mean? I think there's been such a focus on the firing and the laying off of federal workers, but as important as that is, if you're an American voter, you don't necessarily care that the federal workforce is getting laid off. In some ways, you might think that's a good thing, right? Fewer federal employees. What you care about is the deliverables and the resources of the federal government. And there's a latency there that I don't think we realize. A good example, the VA just shut down its electronic health records interoperability contract, maybe $10 billion contract. All of the contractors just got laid off and their businesses shut down, but the veterans haven't yet experienced the disruption of their health care. The young man last night, the survivor of brain cancer, that is such a compelling story. At the same time, Donald Trump and Elon Musk are shutting down medical research in the sciences. So at what point do we realize there are fewer cures for young men like that because of what Doge is doing right now? Right now the focus is on the breaking of the glass, but the rebuilding of it that's not happening is actually what's going to end up mattering the most.
Yeah, Michael, there's a difference between tearing things down and building them up, right? And the second part is always a lot harder. How do Democrats convince the American people that they're the ones to build things up? I think they tried to do that in November. I keep asking this question, but I don't hear a message that's significantly different than I heard months ago.
Here's the good news. Democrats have done the work in terms of doing the things that improve the lives of the American public. The problem is we don't talk about those things. We don't go home and say, this is what I did for you. We go home and talk about these other social issues that many Americans just don't care about. And so to answer your question, as the American people go through this period of sky-high prices, of the value of their retirement accounts falling, Democrats have to communicate to voters, this is what we stand for, this is what we have done, and now this is what we want to do for you.
So do you think they're doing that do they need to do it in a more aggressive way?
Aggressive and in the districts. Forget Washington, forget television, as much as I hate to say it. They should be in their districts holding town halls. I know, it's awful, I'm sorry. Multiple times a week. That's where they should be. They don't need to be in Washington and being a part of this circus that Donald Trump has stirred up.
President Trump is losing in a major way at the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land. He is facing what is a blow to one of the strategies that I've told you about, that we've been documenting, how they want to, from the White House, get some of these cases up to the court. But this conservative-leaning Supreme Court is rejecting one of those bids. This is not the final act, but it is a huge, important, key step, and a step that Trump lost. He basically wanted the court to side with him in a bid to defund and go after these USAID contractors. The move comes just about 12 hours after key parts of the address. So I'm going to show you how this went, because some of what the president said last night was false, just simple lies. Some of it was hopeful, meaning things that he, like any president, might want to achieve, and trying to tell the nation about that. And then some of it was proven false, because the president made claims about things he's doing in this joint sort of congressional press address, right, pressing his case to the whole country as they watch, but he was basically bragging about things he says he has done, which by the next morning, the court said No, you haven't.
Upon taking office, I imposed an immediate freeze on all federal hiring, a freeze on all new federal regulations, and a freeze on all foreign aid.
The Supreme Court rejected the Trump administration's effort to freeze nearly $2 billion in foreign aid.
Yes, he tried to freeze. Yes, he said it. And by the next morning, that was the breaking news. The courts stopped it. And this is something that is a larger problem for Donald Trump for the reasons we've told you about, that he is deliberately, repeatedly going beyond precedent, the law, what courts have ruled in the past, and seeing if he can get away with it. And on this one, he's not getting away with it. There are more than one set of rulings. A lot of them started at the lower courts, as you probably know. We've covered all this, but this is the first major ruling that goes against the defunding plans. And it is a signal that while this, as I've mentioned, is not the final step in the case, right? You start with basically the early steps, and then the White House has tried to, when they've lost, appeal that to the Supreme Court, saying, we know we're losing, but please help us. And so this morning the Supreme Court said, no, we're not helping you get out of this early jam, and you can't just defund, at least this way. The ruling was 5-4. And so that also gives us new information in this second Trump term, because we've got these justices, including the ones he put on the court. And so what you see here against Trump on this case, right, is a working majority of 5 justices. I'm going to leave this up for you because we could be following this for at least the next several years. This could be the coalition that sometimes says no to Trump, even though you see Barrett on there as a Trump appointee and you see Chief Justice Roberts, a Republican appointee. What you also see here is why the White House has this strategy, because they already have 4 votes for something like this, right? They narrowly lost, but they have 4 votes basically willing to go along with the rewriting of how funding and the power of the purse and congressional norms that go back 100 years. So you see those 5 going against the president. You see the 4, and we could see this coalition and this breakdown in the future. Roberts and Barrett also joined the liberal justices in that January ruling, which was a different topic. But again, if you cleave it on the line of just doing whatever Donald Trump demands or not, they said that sentencing in New York could go forward while he had those other justices siding with him. So this is a split. This is one of the battle lines that people follow. And remember, Donald Trump has pursued power in very aggressive ways that tested our system. And sometimes he lost, and sometimes the Supreme Court bailed him out. But other presidents have done this too. I'm not saying he's anything like FDR or Harry Truman. If you talk to historians and people who study this stuff, those are some of the high point presidencies for foreign policy and leading America. But there were big cases that you read about in law school about testing powers, which meant that the era of those different presidents was also tested by the era of those Supreme Courts. We're seeing that replay now. And if everything I'm telling you sounds a little bit legal, a little bit in the weeds, I promise you I'm not just emphasizing this because I'm MSNBC's legal correspondent, because I'm a lawyer. I'm emphasizing this because when presidents test power, it is first and foremost the Supreme Court that is that block. We can debate whether members of Congress should yell more or less or hold up different paddles. People were talking about that last night. But it is always in our system of government the Supreme Court that matters most in quickly, before even a next election, saying no if you've exceeded authority. So this ruling today is important. It was concise and to the point. We know about the split because there was a dissent, but the unsigned majority ruling said this effort by Trump was denied. And then it had some legalese about saying the lower court ruling, which was leaving in place after denying Trump's application, would still have to deal with the details of how to pause or slow down these efforts to defund things that Trump doesn't like. The reason why that's a big deal is if Congress funds it, then in most cases the president can't just cancel it after the funding law is passed. Supreme Court reporter Nina Totenberg also noted that the way this was done seemed unusual. The court majority basically said, if you dot your I's and cross your T's, we've got your back. Justice Alito had that dissent, which showed the 4 that I showed you, the 4 justices who wanted to do what Trump wanted. And he argued that a single district court judge should not have unchecked power to make the government pay basically the agreements it's agreed to And then he threw in his own little kind of personal emotion. He is stunned. I am stunned, Alito says. Now, that's a reminder of how Justice Alito and certain members of the court have really given up any pretense of just hewing to the law and saying, this fits our precedent or this doesn't, because when you say you're stunned, you're just sharing your emotions based on what your preconceptions were. I guess he thought there would be at least one extra vote, and he is stunned that there's not. And but for him being an important member of the Supreme Court, if any other lawyer said that, you'd go, well, that sounds like a you problem, that the events on the court aren't matching perceptions and expectations you had, and you feel stunned. Now, the context for this is a series of lower court losses. And we've been tracking this for you as the White House and President Trump test power even more than in the first term and basically dare the courts to do something about it. And we've seen 5 blows and 1 win this week alone. So we put that up here. Again, we're not going to go through every one of these, but we are tracking them for you, and we will bring you the key ones and the highlights. The SCOTUS, of course, at the highest court in the land being the most important. Supreme Court justices rejecting that foreign aid freeze. You also have the bid to slash funding for health and basically related research. A judge blocked that just today, separate case. Another court gave Trump a new victory, rejecting New York City's bid to get $80 million in FEMA aid back. And a judge just yesterday ruling Trump cannot legally fire federal workers on this board chair position, at least without cause. In other words, the rules and laws still matter. There's also been blocking of health care and other issues. This has been a rough week overall. It is, of course, the 6th of Trump's term. Several other setbacks include Musk's attempt to get data blocked, an appeals court maintaining a blockage on what I told you was never going to fly, which was Trump trying to rewrite the Constitution's citizenship rules. And when you take it together, if you think about what's happening, they are doing what Steve Bannon once talked about. They are flooding the zone. You don't have to read all of this again. I'm just doing something we rarely do, which is combine a bunch of graphics to show you they are throwing a bunch of stuff out there. But if you let your eyes just sort of glaze over all the red X's, you are seeing just how many of them are being blocked in various ways. And there are 90-plus lawsuits now. Some of this is happening in parts of the country and through efforts that you're not always going to see, even if we try to keep track of it in general, but it shows you where the fault lines are. Trump is losing at the highest court in the land, and many of the other efforts are running into checkpoints, those red X's or setbacks or freezes, even as many Americans tuned in and heard the president talk about this as if it was all going just according to plan, or as if things that were frozen and paused and might never happen are definitely going to happen.
I think that's correct, but I think that there's a longer run that Roberts has in mind, and that is that he doesn't want the court to look like hacks doing the bidding of a president who either supports them or nominated them to the bench. And I think Barrett must agree with that as well. And so now we have a couple of data points in that direction, so that the trust of Americans is dependent upon the perception of the court. And that's the way I see this decision. And it was a loss to Trump, but it was also important to note that when the per curiam was issued, they talked about the fact that Trump and company were acknowledging the order of the court, as opposed to, say, an Andrew Jackson thing in which they would just say, well, let them enforce it. That has not happened. So there are two things going on, and I hope and expect that we're going to see more of the same as necessary. And if I may add one other thing, I think if you read the dissent, which is 8 pages, by Alito, imagine if you're trying to sell that to Roberts or to Barrett, which is what happens when they're figuring out who is going to issue a decision and what it's going to say. And the Chief Justice always gets to assign if he's on the side that voted for the proposition. And I think if any of the judges of the 5 would have a lot of trouble adopting Alito, putting aside the question of stunning. So that's my first observation about it.
of these fights against what appear to be these illegal mass firings and these efforts to unilaterally close down and turn off parts of the government, the materially most consequential one of all of them is one that was obtained because of one man whose name is Hampton Dellinger. Trump tried to fire him in the first week in February. Mr. Dellinger fought it immediately. He fought it long enough and hard enough that while he was able to retain his post, thanks to a judge's order, still under fire from Trump, he succeeded in enlisting the Merit Systems Protection Board to reverse thousands of baseless firings of so-called probationary employees. Among the direct results of what Hampton Dellinger did are more than 5,000 people at USDA who yesterday were told they must be reinstated to their jobs. Hampton Dellinger today himself announced that he is ending his one-man fight to stay at his post at the Office of Special Counsel, which looks after whistleblower rights, which looks after the rights of government employees to not be fired for corrupt or improper reasons. He left that job today after an appeals court ruling basically made clear that he must. But take him as a case study here, because his one-man, one-month fight to not go quietly saved the jobs of thousands of people who were improperly fired by Trump. And that fight set the bar and set the tone for what it means to refuse to go quietly and to make as much good trouble as you can every single day that you can for as long as you can. Joining us now for his first interview since ending this fight is Hampton Dellinger. He's now the former head of the Office of Special Counsel. Mr. Dellinger, it's really nice to meet you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm sorry that this was your last day.
Yeah, I'd rather be at work.
Yeah. So, well, tell me about your job. Tell me what your job was.
Well, for almost a year, I was the place that if you're a federal government whistleblower and you see wrongdoing happening on your job in the government, you could come to my office and report it. I could initiate an investigation, and if you happen to be retaliated against for blowing the whistle, I could help protect you.
That job, for obvious reasons, when you think about checks and balances, is an independent job. One in which Congress created the job, yes?
50 years ago.
Congress created the job and created it in such a way that the president couldn't come in and say, I don't like what this guy is doing protecting these whistleblowers, get him out, I want my own guy in there. Specifically, the design of the job, right?
That's right. And for 50 years, presidents have respected that design, had respected that there would be a limited but important role for my office and that we would have a measure of protection so we wouldn't worry about losing our jobs when we stood up for other federal employees who were unlawfully losing their jobs.
When the president, February 7th, told you that you were fired, had you been expecting it? Did you already have a plan in place for what you would do in that moment?
Yes and no. I had seen inspectors general, really capable, hardworking IGs be ousted. I knew that there was a general view that they didn't want independent watchdogs in the executive branch, but I also knew the history of my office and that it had been around for 50 years and courts had respected that independence for 50 years. So when I got the email saying, you're fired, thank you for your service, I didn't feel like they meant it. I also didn't feel like it merited a response. So I went back and forth, and, I'm someone who believes in the presidency. I want to see every American president succeed, but I also knew that my firing violated a law that had been on the books, and I just couldn't walk away in the face of that.
You fought for a solid month since that happened. Your case took one trip to the Supreme Court already. Back down to lower courts, you got an adverse appeals court ruling yesterday, which led to your decision to effectively stop your fight. Did you feel like you had no choice in terms of stopping it, that there might be additional harm done to the things that you care about and that you were trying to protect if you stuck with it and kept fighting?
Certainly that was an aspect of it. I had a 3-judge panel that was somewhat conservative, and that mirrors the Supreme Court. So I knew that it could be an uphill fight, even though I disagreed with the court's ruling, and I would disagree with the Supreme Court if they found my position unconstitutional. But the other issue, Rachel, is it was going to be months, maybe a year, before I'd get a final answer. I'd be on the sidelines the whole time, and I've seen the damage over the past month or so that can happen in days, sometimes even hours, to these federal agencies when the laws aren't being followed. And so the idea of trying to come back in a year and fix what I think might be broken forever in terms of the independence of my agency was not something that I thought I could do.
You talk about not wanting to be on the sidelines for the duration of that kind of a fight, waiting for something to get up to and through the United States Supreme Court. What does not being on the sidelines mean? What do you plan to do? Now, today's day one out of government service.
Yeah, rest maybe, but I tell you, I can't let go of yesterday. I started out in the morning and helped get 6,000 unlawfully fired federal employees their jobs back.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I lost my job. And so it was my best day at work and my worst day at work on the same day. So I'm going to hold on to that for a little bit.
Well, don't hold on to it for too long. I mean, you have seen things. The skills that got you this job in the first place and that allowed you to perform those duties for the past year, but also what you've seen about what it means to fight. It's part of the reason I wanted to talk to you tonight, because you embody an example here of what it is to stand up and put your name as the plaintiff on that suit against the government, to stand up for the way the American people ought to be treated. We very rarely ask individual human beings to say, I, the named plaintiff, am here to stand up for the people against the government that is mistreating them. And it takes something. It takes resources. You had help in filing the suit?
I did. I had brilliant lawyers who assisted me. I got a lot of support from whistleblower advocacy groups, from military veterans groups, because a lot of my job was focused on the VA, which is why, by the way, I think it makes no sense for the president to put in the secretary of the VA. I honor his military service, but he's got a big job on his own to do. And the idea that he could be in my job investigating himself is just the essence of conflict of interest.
They dual-hatted the VA secretary and your job.
That is the plan as of a couple of weeks ago. But to your broader point, I'm just one person, and I was inspired by others. I saw the acting U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York stand up and for the rule of law and not sign off on something she didn't think was right. Yes. I saw the inspectors general, who I'd worked with hand in hand for a year, being ousted, and I knew their integrity and their talents. And I feel like the easiest thing for me to do was just to follow the law. That's what I'd done every day in my job, and I knew my firing violated the law. So I just held true to that. I listened as I was thinking about whether to file the suit or not to Shelter in the Storm by Bob Dylan. And I just think for a lawyer, the shelter in the storm and chaos and uncertainty is the law. And that's just what I'm trying to hold on to.
I have been not thinking about it in that poetic a term, but I have been thinking about the peculiar and insidious evil of arbitrary action, right? When you got those 5,000 plus employees at USDA their jobs back, part of the reason you got them their jobs back is because they were fired for arbitrary reasons.
Right.
And we've seen that everywhere, right? We've seen that from, you see CDC employees get fired one day, rehired the next day, fired the next day, rehired the next day. And it's arbitrary action. They're being told it's performance. It's clearly not. And there's something that's just dumb about that, but there's also something, I think, really insidious, because when the government behaves arbitrarily like that, it's telling you there's no refuge for you in the law, and there's no refuge for you in order. We will act, there will be no law and order for you. We'll use the law against you whenever we can, but there's no refuge for you there. There's nothing that you can turn to ask for fairness. And the arbitrary and misspelled and dumb and instantly retracted and reinstated and untrackable and anonymous nature of what they're doing, I feel like it gives it some of its authoritarian sort of cadence and feel.
Well, we only have a government because of laws. We have a president because of the Supreme Rule Book, the Constitution. Yeah. So everything is created and structured by a set of rules, a set of laws. And so that's what I think we have to hold on to. And many individuals are putting it front and center. Many individual judges are retaining the essence, I think, of what makes us America. But the other thing about federal employees that I don't want to be lost, Rachel, is that 30% of them more than 600,000 are military veterans.
Yes.
They wore the uniform. They put their lives on the line for our country. They come back to federal service. They're nurses, they're TSA agents, they're FBI agents. And so the least we can do is treat them with respect and treat them lawfully.
Let me ask you one last question here about the law, and it is about something that happened today. There was no cabinet meeting on the president's schedule today, but he nevertheless sort of announced after the fact that there had been a cabinet meeting, and there started to emerge some reporting about what happened. The president reportedly, or at least says now, that what he told his agency heads, his cabinet officials today, is that Elon Musk can no longer order firings, that the agencies must do it themselves, and Elon Musk is only there to advise. This obviously, it cuts against what Elon Musk has been doing. There was also a strange moment in the State of the Union where the president described Elon Musk as the head of Doge, and then immediately court filings were updated to reflect that because the government had sworn to federal courts that he wasn't the head of Doge. This overall idea of firing all the probationary employees, of Elon Musk's anonymous group coming in and ordering shutdowns of agencies and firings of whole categories of people, do you think it is running into a legal cul-de-sac? Are we getting to the point where the law is going to start to trip up these efforts in a more wholesale way?
I think the law should. I think Congress should step up. You know, Congress has the power of the purse.
Yeah.
The president can reorganize government, but there are a set of rules that govern how that reorganization should take place. And all I was asking is that the rules be followed. And I think it's a simple truth, and I think it's one that courts will hold on to and vindicate, and I hope Congress does their part as well.
Hampton Dellinger, as of today, the former head of the Office of Special Counsel, and somebody whose story is going to be told for a very long time because of what you did and because of its effects. I know you have some wounds to lick and you need probably some rest, but don't go too far. The country needs you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. For a president on the way to give a State of the Union address, this was not a great headline for that day. Quote, Atlanta Fed shock sounds Trump session warning. The Federal Reserve Bank in Atlanta forecasting yesterday that the U.S. economy, American GDP, is shrinking right now at an annualized rate of 2.8%, minus 2.8%. Now, that is just one forecast. It's an early forecast. But, you know, Trump session is not a great headline for a President Trump on the day of his first big speech. But here's another one from today, the morning after his big speech. Quote, private employers added just 77,000 jobs in February, far below expectations. And again, this is just a forecast, in this case from private industry. We don't get official hiring numbers until the monthly official jobs report comes out the day after tomorrow. But 77,000 is less than half the new jobs that were created last month, and it's half of what Wall Street has been expecting. So very worrying economic news, and it comes on top of Wall Street posting its worst loss of the year this week on Monday, when Trump announced that he was going through with his tariff plan on Canada and Mexico and China. Some of those losses in the markets were regained today after Trump had second thoughts and walked some of that back. But barely 6 weeks into this second Trump presidential term, economic indicators are blinking red in response to Trump's action as president. But you know, they're called economic indicators for a reason. Measurements like these, measurements like the jobs report and GDP and economic growth, all these things, they're supposed to indicate what is going on in the economy. They're supposed to help the public and businesses and policymakers understand what is happening with the economy. What if they could just change those indicators, though? Turn the lights off so they didn't blink at all, red or otherwise. What if they could just change what these numbers mean and whether they indicate anything real about the economy? When I said at the top of the show I had a big warning for you, this is what it's about. Over the weekend on Fox News, Trump's newly appointed Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, floated the idea of changing the way we calculate GDP in this country. Lutnick says he wants to take government spending out of the equation. Just take that out and say that's not part of it, which would, of course, obscure the effects of everything Trump does in government, let alone his top campaign donor who's given free rein to do whatever he wants to the government. It also turns out Elon Musk, the president's top campaign donor, is into this idea. On Friday, he himself posted online that we should change the way we calculate America's economic growth, America's GDP. Never mind the pesky concerns of economists about interference in the federal data, we should just calculate it in a different way, a better way, a way that suits them better. In the category of watching what they do but not what they say, though, here's something that Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has just done. The Wall Street Journal was first to report that Secretary Lutnick has now disbanded 2 advisory committees whose job it is to make sure that the economic data from the federal government are accurate. An expert who worked on one of those now disbanded committees tells the Wall Street Journal that their work, quote, goes to the essential transparency of these statistical agencies. When you remove that transparency, then that diminishes trust. Already just 6 weeks in, Trump has taken a number of actions that have potentially disastrous economic consequences in this country, and in many ways, the country is already feeling it. If they are going to cook the books so that economic indicators like unemployment numbers and economic growth and whether or not we're in a recession or a depression just don't mean anything anymore because they've recalculated them with special Trump numbers, what does that mean for our ability to know the truth about what's going on, and what does it mean for us economically?
How worried should we be about an economy that is slowing in all of this? We saw the GDP